Hello guys, how are you all? Welcome back to my channel. So, today we are gonna see, what if Izuku Yagi finally gets a quirk that allows him to create any quirks, part 2. So before we start, please go check out the author of this fanfic, the Ultimate one, link is in the description, also subscribe to our channel, and like this video, so let's begin the video. 2 weeks later. Izuku sat in his mind space after a long day of school, work, training, and a bit of bullying from his classmates. It was the norm, as he tried to figure something out with Chase. Chase, I really don't know what to do here. I mean, I have 108 quirks stored up in the quirk library now with 3 quirk creations available, but I don't know what the best course of action is, he said with a finger on his chin. Chase snapped his fingers, getting a cup of tea for Izuku as he walked over to him. I can help make recommendations and give you answers to problems you have about quirks, but I cannot tell what quirks you should specifically put together, he said, handing it to him. I know that, but can you give me some insight, he asked genuinely. Well sir, I would try to have a quirk with versatility or a fighting-based quirk, he said simply. It was a simple suggestion but a good one for that. Izuku nodded thoughtfully at that and pulled up some quirks on the screen for him to use. Izuku tapped his chin as he browsed through the holographic interface in his mind space, quirks arranged in neat rows, each with a brief description of its abilities. The quirk library glowed faintly, a testament to the immense power he had accumulated through years of hard work, observation, and sheer determination. Alright, let's break this down, Izuku muttered, his voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. If I'm going for versatility, I'll need a quirk that can adapt to various situations. But if it's fighting based, then I'll need something with raw power, something that can hold its own against overwhelming odds. Chase nodded approvingly, a slight smile tugging at his lips. Precisely. But remember, combining quirks isn't just about raw compatibility. You must also consider how you'll use them strategically in real-world scenarios. Izuku nodded, his emerald eyes flickering with determination. Maybe I don't need to combine quirks this time, he said, pulling up a quirk he had read extensively on in his mind space. Chase looked at the screen. Black Whip? He asked questioningly. Yeah, you said I could use a versatile quirk in my arsenal. This is one of the best ones in my library. Here, I will read the description, said Izuku. Izuku cleared his throat and read aloud the description of Black Whip, his finger tracing the glowing text on the screen. Black Whip. A quirk that allows the user to manifest powerful, flexible tendrils made of dark energy. These tendrils can be controlled with great precision and used for a variety of purposes such as binding, swinging, or even attacking. The user can control the tendrils' length, strength, and flexibility, making this quirk highly versatile. However, it requires mental and physical stamina to maintain control, especially when multiple tendrils are in use simultaneously. The quirk is highly effective in combat and for mobility, but prolonged use can lead to fatigue. It also says that with all that time being in one for all, the power is amplified and it is made more powerful now. Izuku looked up from the screen, his expression thoughtful. It's versatile enough to be used in both combat and utility situations. And with my enhanced cognition, I could probably use this with great precision, even under pressure. That seems like a great idea. Do you want to change anything about the quirk before we seal the deal? Asked Chase as he went up to the screen preparing for the adjustments. Izuku hesitated, his eyes tracing the details of Black Whip once more. He had always seen its potential, but now, with everything he had gone through, his training, his growth, and the weight of his struggles, he understood it on a deeper level. The versatility it offered was incredible, but would it be enough to face the challenges ahead? No, he said softly, but with resolve. I think Black Whip is exactly what I need. I don't need to change it. I just need to learn how to control it better. If I can master this, I'll be unstoppable. He nodded to himself, and a quiet determination settled in. Chase tilted his head, considering Izuku's words carefully. I want you to realize this through Master Izuku. This is the first quirk that will be for combat or fighting purposes. Unlike Brain Boost and Cell Surge, you need to actively train with this quirk so you can grow powerful with it. I know, Izuku said, his voice steady. I'm ready for it. If I'm going to be strong enough to protect those I care about, I need to master this. Chase's expression softened. That's the spirit, Master Izuku. However, remember to pace yourself. Rushing will only lead to mistakes. Mastery doesn't happen overnight, but with time, your control over Black Whip will become second nature. Izuku took a deep breath, grounding himself in the reality of the journey ahead. He had already faced so many challenges, but this mastering Black Whip would be a whole new battlefield. Yet, something about it resonated with him deeply. The versatility of the quirk, its ability to be used both defensively and offensively, gave him the edge he needed. I'll take my time, Izuku agreed. Let's do this, he said, clenching his fist. Excellent sir, I shall begin the process, he said. Chase began to hit a few buttons and a light started to form. This light was green mixed in with black, similar to what the black whip looked like. Eventually, it settled and Izuku stood up from his seat and looked at it. "Black whip is ready to be integrated into your body, sir," said Chase as he stood beside him. "Reach out and claim it," he said. "You can do this, Izuku," he whispered to himself, clenching his hands into fists. "This is the next step." He reached out to it and touched the light. He let it flow throughout his body. Almost immediately he felt the power it gave. He closed his eyes and he could feel the power flowing everywhere. His head, chest, arms, legs, feet, everything. The feeling felt warm, it felt right. The feeling eventually went away and Izuku opened his eyes. Chase looked at him curious. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Great, I feel the power it gave for a while," he said, looking at his arms. "I think that I am ready to make another quirk," he said happily, but Chase frowned. "As much as that would be cool, Master Izuku. We cannot do that. You see, your body can only handle creating one quirk every 24 hours, otherwise it puts tremendous strain on you. Why don't you go and try to train with Black Whip to get a handle on things, and then we can come back to it," he offered. "Ah, I see," Izuku said, rubbing the back of his neck. "I guess I got a little carried away there." He let out a small laugh, trying to shake off the rush of excitement that still pulsed through his veins. He had just experienced the power of Black Whip and it was incredible. The last thing he wanted was to overstrain himself by rushing into another quirk. Chase gave him a patient smile. "It's understandable. Good luck. Be sure to train in a secluded area in case Black Whip freaks out on you," he said. "I will. Thanks again, Chase," said Izuku, pushing himself out of the mind space. Izuku got up from his bed and sighed. It was 3:50 AM, meaning it was time to get ready to train. His body was accustomed to getting up this early anyway, and he was used to it. His progress thus far has been amazing. His body was starting to become more defined in his muscles and was starting to get taller. He stood at a height of 5'6" and at 13 that was tall, all things considered. Ironically, he was the same height as his siblings, but that didn't matter. Speaking of siblings, they were starting to train harder than they ever had before. The one thing he was glad about was some days they were too sore to bother him and they left him alone for the most part. He had still been keeping up with his guitar playing skills and was debating on buying an electric guitar. Jiro had helped him in that department, which made him happy. He was hoping to repay her someday, and he would, but it would take some time to do so. He quietly made his way out of the apartment as he did every day and tried to find a clearing to work on Black Whip. It said in the profile that this belonged to the 5th user of One for All, and it relied heavily on emotions to keep in check. He was still thoroughly debating if he should make One for All a quirk of his to show that he was worthy of having the power, but he really didn't know what to do. He didn't want to be like his father in that way. Izuku found a clearing in a small forest that he would usually work on his moves, and he did verify that he could be there so that there would be no trouble, as it was a training area for people. He set down his workout bag and the school bag and walked to the middle of the clearing. "Alright, Black Whip," Izuku murmured to himself. "Let's see what you can really do." He started to focus on different feelings, trying to get Black Whip to emerge in front of him. He did remember that it would be progress no matter what, so he closed his eyes and hoped for the best. "Come on," Izuku murmured under his breath, focusing on his emotions. The excitement of having Black Whip was still fresh in his mind, but he needed to control that rush. A few moments passed and nothing happened. Izuku's fingers twitched slightly and his muscles tightened, but there was no sign of Black Whip. Frustration bubbled up inside him. He had worked so hard to get here, and now it felt like the quirk was slipping away from his grasp. "No," he muttered to himself. "I can do this. I've come this far. I can control this." Taking a deep breath, here he focused, letting his frustration melt away, replaced by a sense of purpose. His heart slowed, his mind becoming clear. Izuku's fingers relaxed, and he allowed his focus to drift deeper, remembering the past struggles he had overcome, the emotions he had harnessed to push forward. His desire to protect those close to him, his friends, his family, the people who believed in him, those were the emotions he needed to channel. The green-black light flickered in his mind's eye. He could feel it, Black Whip, responding to his emotions. It was closed. All he had to do was reach for it. Slowly, cautiously, Izuku extended his right arm, feeling the power stir beneath the surface. His fingers tingled with the anticipation of control, and then, with a slow exhale, he reached out. And there it was. A dark tendril of energy surged from his hand, snapping into the air like a whip. Even if this was for less than a second, it still showed to him. Izuku's eyes widened in astonishment as the tendril of Black Whip disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. The sensation lingered in his hand, almost like an echo, a reminder that he had done it. He had summoned Black Whip, if only for a fleeting moment. The grin spread across his face. "I did it," he whispered, his voice filled with awe. But the momentary success wasn't enough. He knew he had to push further, to hold onto the quirk longer, to make it an extension of himself, rather than just a fleeting burst of power. He clenched his fists, his resolve strengthening. Alright, let's try that again. Focus, he muttered to himself, shutting out the distractions of the world around him. Feel it. Don't force it. This time, he didn't try to summon Black Whip immediately. Instead, he let his body relax, his mind wandering to the emotions that fueled his desire to be a hero. His love for saving people, his passion for becoming stronger not just for himself but for others. Those feelings began to stir within him. He thought of his family and how he had been treated all these years to let it influence him somewhat. A flicker of green-black energy began to form in his palm. It danced and crackled like a spark of life, hesitant yet eager. "There you are," Izuku whispered, a small smile tugging at his lips. A small tendril of Black Whip formed and was about a foot long, but it disappeared almost immediately after. Izuku sighed at this. "I didn't think that this was going to be this difficult. But I have about a couple of years before I go to UA," he said to himself. Training continued until he had to go to his class at 8, as he normally did. Granted, there was barely any progress, but he had time. 2 months later. Izuku had been proud of the progress he had made. Black Whip was getting easier and easier to control. He was able to create one Black Whip for 5 seconds, but if he did 2 tendrils, it could only be for 1 second. The quirk was still too much to handle that much power, and it made him frustrated from time to time. He had used one quirk creation recently, and that was Danger Sense. It belonged to the 4th user of One for All, Tashanori. Danger Sense was a quirk that alerted him to imminent danger through a sharp tingling in his head. At first, the sensation had been disorienting, like an overwhelming itch he couldn't scratch, but with time, he began to adjust. He was honestly thankful for all the bullying at school for once, as he was able to feel the malice from people when something was going to happen. He had adjusted the quirk to be more manageable to handle it. He had eventually gotten used to it as a whole, but this was a very handy quirk. The next quirk that he created was something he called Eagle Eyes. It was a very simplistic quirk, but it allowed him to pick up movement easier with his eyes. He had gained perfect vision with this quirk, and it boosted his perception significantly, enabling him to track fast-moving objects with incredible accuracy. Eagle Eyes wasn't as flashy as Black Whip or as critical as Danger Sense, but it was invaluable in training. With it, Izuku could anticipate movements better, plan his actions more effectively, and notice details others might overlook. As he said before, he wanted effective and non-flashy quirks so that not many people wouldn't know of his power to create quirks. The more and more he thought about it, the more he realized that this power would make people freak out and he might get hunted down for it. He might have been over-exaggerating, but you couldn't be too careful. He was playing his guitar right now to relieve some stress. A big part of his stress was gone as he quit his part-time job to solely work on his online business. The superhero theme covers were a success and he was making a little over $1,000 a month. It was starting to get too troublesome to make the covers himself, so he started to find a way so that the designs would be put on the covers faster. He created a machine to help with that, and he was surprised when he did. He knew he was smart, but not the type of smart to put designs on the covers of notebooks. It was simple really. He placed the design and cover in the machine and pressed it down to transfer the design onto the cover. A big plus to it was he could reuse the designs. He had designs of Endeavor, All Might unfortunately, Mirko, Edgeshot, Ryukyu, Hawks, and even some lesser-known heroes like Fat Gum that he drew himself. Customers loved the variety, and orders kept pouring in from all over Japan. Izuku was amazed at how much his business had grown in such a short time. It felt good to have something he could call his own, something that was thriving because of his hard work and creativity. He was interrupted when his sister knocked on his door. This really confused him, as she never did that. Not since they were much younger anyway. He went to the door and opened it. "Yes, Inori?" asked Izuku, curious about what she wanted. "What the heck are you doing here, Deku?" she asked, trying to look into his room. "Why does that matter?" he asked. "Because I wanted to know. But Dad said he wanted to talk to all 3 of us," she said, still trying to speak. He furrowed his brow at that but shrugged his shoulders. "That's surprising, to all 3 of us, he probably means you and Ichiro." This confused her slightly, but she shook her head as she headed to the living room with Izuku in pursuit. He walked downstairs to see everyone was already sitting, including his father who was standing at the head of the table. He sat at the end of the table while his mom and siblings were at the other end. Tashanori cleared his throat to speak. "Well, you 3, now that you are here. I have something for all 3 of you," he said, pulling out 5 slips of paper and sliding it over to them. The 3 of them opened it to find it was an all-exclusive pass to Tour UA. Izuku stared at the slip of paper in his hands. An all-exclusive pass to Tour UA. He couldn't deny the thrill that coursed through him. UA was a place he had idolized for as long as he could remember. But at the same time, his mind raced with caution. Something didn't feel right at all, he felt like there was something more to be said. "No way," said Inori looking at the tour pass. "This is awesome. How did you get these?" exclaimed Ichiro. "I have my ways and connections. I figured that all three of you wanted to go to UA and we could take a tour of the place. They have the best heroics program for up-and-coming heroes for you too, and one of the best general education programs in all of Japan for you, Izuku," he said, smiling at him. And there it was. He knew there was going to be something like that. The good thing was it was up to him for what program he wanted to do at UA. The hero course being the one he was choosing to do. Tashanori sighed, "Though the bad news is that myself and your mother cannot go with you tomorrow, as we have an important business meeting. So, you will have 2 other tickets. You could even bring a friend or 2 if you wanted," he said. Ichiro and Inori looked at each other, as if they were the only 2 that knew what was happening. Izuku shook his head, as he knew why. His mom and dad had to go across Japan for a mission. His mom, from what he figured out, was his little helper with phone calls, telling him missions and appointments. They were only doing this in front of him because they were still under the impression that he didn't know his father was All Might. Inori smirked, "We could bring Bakugo. He always wanted to go, and he would be mad if we didn't invite him," she said, thinking of what would happen if they didn't. "Who else could we bring?" asked Ichiro, thinking of anyone. "I don't care who you bring, as long as those passes get used," said Tashanori, walking away with Inko following behind. "I have someone I could bring," said Izuku, shrugging. Inori and Ichiro looked at him, surprised that he had a friend. Ichiro scoffed at that. "That's a good one. Don't make me laugh like that," he said, wiping a tear away from his eyes. Izuku's expression didn't change as he pulled out his phone, making them more shocked. "Wait, you actually have a friend?" asked Inori, pointing at him, looking at Ichiro. Izuku rolled his eyes as he got up to walk away from the table. There were a few more seconds of ringing and Jiro picked up the phone. "Hello?" Jiro's voice came through the speaker, slightly groggy, as if she had just woken up. Izuku smiled softly. "Hey, Jiro, it's Izuku. I was wondering if you'd be interested in going on a tour of the USA tomorrow." Inori and Ichiro were jaw-dropped, looking at their younger brother. To their knowledge, he had no friends and would spend most of his time reading, at school, or doing his own thing. There was a pause at the other end, followed by a sleepy chuckle. "A UA tour? Are you serious? The UA? Yes, indeed. It says the tour on the pass starts at 9 AM. Would you be down?" he asked, hoping she would say yes. "Damn straight. Who else is going?" she asked happily. "My siblings and a friend of theirs called Bakugo," he said, making his siblings confused now. "Alright. I'll be there at around 8:15 tomorrow morning, ready to go," she said excitedly. He turned around to see his still gobsmacked siblings and nodded at them. "Now we have a fifth for tomorrow," he said, returning to his room upstairs. Inori looked over to Ichiro, who looked back at her. "You think she is quirkless just like him?" he asked. "His friend has to be. I don't see anyone hanging out with our brother," she said, crossing her arms over her chest. The next morning, Izuku woke up earlier than usual. There was a sense of excitement in the air, but a nervous tension settled in his stomach as he prepared for the tour. He quickly got dressed, made a light breakfast for himself, and then grabbed the tour passes from his desk. He made sure to set them in his pocket, checking that he hadn't forgotten anything important. He walked downstairs and heard a knock on the door, and Izuku opened it to see Bakugo right in front of him. "Move it, loser," he said, going over to Ichiro and Inori, who was at the table. "Morning, Bakugo," he said to himself, shaking his head. He prayed to God that today would go well. He knew that it would be fine if Jiro were to show up because he knew his siblings, and Bakugo didn't do anything stupid in front of people because they didn't want to ruin their image. "So, Kakin. Did you know that Izuku has a friend?" said Inori, smirking slightly. Bakugo froze at the mention of Izuku having a friend, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. "My ass, he does. It's true, bro. He talked to the guy last night," and Ichiro leaned back in his chair. Bakugo's glare intensified, his arms folding tighter across his chest. "No way. Izuku, having a friend? That's a joke." His voice was dripping with disbelief. "What's the catch? Is she just like him? Quirkless and pathetic?" Izuku's arm twitched, showing a small tendril of black whip for less than a second, but it faded away. "Is it that hard for guys to accept that I have a friend?" he said, getting more frustrated. Bakugo's sharp eyes locked onto Izuku, and the intensity of his gaze was almost unbearable. "TCH. You think I'm stupid? Just because you have some friends doesn't mean you're not still a pathetic loser," he sneered. "Yeah, whatever, Bakugo," he said, shaking his head. Bakugo noticed this and glared. Before he could say anything, there was a knock on the door, and Izuku smiled, knowing who it was. Ichiro, Inori, and Bakugo leaned in their chairs to see what this friend of looked like. Izuku quickly moved to open the door, and sure enough, standing there was Jiro, looking as cheerful as ever. She gave him a wide smile, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "Hey Izuku. Ready for this tour?" "Hey Jiro." Izuku greeted her warmly, stepping aside to let her in. "Yeah, I'm ready. It's gonna be a great day." "Dang right it is," said Izuku smiling. Ichiro looked at the friend and spit out his drink, catching the other two's attention. "You're a girl," he yelled out. Jiro tilted her head slightly, a small smirk forming on her face as she looked at Ichiro. "Yeah, last time I checked, I was still a girl," she said, her tone light and playful, not taking offense at the surprised outburst. Izuku and Jiro had planned this, which is why they weren't too shocked at the way they were acting. Izuku had given her the lowdown of how they acted and what they did to him, and he had to call her at some point because she threatened to beat them to a pulp. It meant a lot she would do that for him, but it wouldn't do anything to help his cause. "Alright, let us get to the train station. My future school awaits me," said Bakugo after leaving the apartment. Izuku, Jiro, and the rest of the group quickly gathered their things and made their way out of the apartment. Bakugo, already ahead, was stomping down the stairs with an air of impatience, clearly eager to get going. His words were sharp and clipped as he moved quickly, never once looking back to check on the others. Izuku sighed but didn't let it bother him too much. It was just Bakugo being Bakugo, after all. As they walked to the train station, Inori looked back to Jiro and Izuku, smiling happily as they walked along the path. So, this is where Deku is getting all of his confidence from. That's why he started to walk around with more of it. It's because she became his friend. She thought to herself, narrowing her eyes at Jiro. Meanwhile, Jiro was chatting away with Izuku, her voice light and energetic as they continued on their way to the train station. "So, Izuku, are you nervous at all? I mean, we're about to see UA, the place where the best heroes are trained. I'm kind of excited, to be honest. I've heard the place is crazy with how they do things." Izuku smiled softly, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. "A little nervous, yeah. It's just I've always dreamed about going to UA, and now that it's so close, it feels unreal." Jiro laughed lightly, elbowing him gently. "I bet it's overwhelming, but you'll be fine. You've got the heart of a hero, and you've worked hard to get here. That's all that matters." Izuku blushed slightly with her encouragement. "Thanks Jiro. It feels good to hear that." Inori went wide-eyed. "That settles it. That is where he is getting confidence from. Whenever he doubts himself, she is there to bring him up. I need to do something about this before this gets out of hand." As they neared the train station, the group's energy started to pick up. Bakugo, as expected, was already at the platform, tapping his foot impatiently. Ichiro and Inori were discussing something quietly, though Inori occasionally shot glances toward Jiro, her earlier suspicions still lingering. It was clear that she was calculating her next move, trying to figure out what was so special about Izuku's new friend. They all boarded the train and were on their way to UA. Izuku couldn't help but smile as the train bustled by buildings waiting to go to his dream school. Jiro was lost in her own thoughts as they headed to UA. He wasn't kidding. Just off first glance, these three look like snobby kids. I am amazed that Izuku turned out the way he did with this pressure. I am glad I found him and made him my friend, otherwise he would be a lost soul right now. She thought, looking at her friend, marveling at the sights. The 5 future heroes soon made it to their stop and started to walk to the UA grounds. As they stepped off the train and began walking toward UA, the air was filled with a mixture of awe and anticipation. Even Bakugo, usually brash and dismissive, couldn't entirely hide his curiosity as the grand structure of UA Academy came into view. Its towering gates and sleek modern design were a testament to the prestige of the school, the beacon of hero training in Japan. "Wow," said Ichiro, looking around. "Agreed," replied Inori. The 5 of them soon stopped as the passes said to wait at the gate of the entrance, and they were there 15 minutes early, so they were all good to go. The group stood outside the massive gates of UA, each lost in their own thoughts. The air was crisp with the anticipation of something great. Izuku couldn't help but fidget with his tour pass as he glanced around at his companions. Bakugo leaned against a nearby post, arms crossed, and tapped his foot impatiently, while Ichiro and Inori were whispering to each other, likely about Jiro. Jiro, on the other hand, was the picture of calm confidence. She had her hands in her jacket pockets, her eyes scanning the impressiveness of the academy. "This place really lives up to the hype," she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Izuku smiled softly at her words. "Yeah, it really does," he agreed, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and excitement. "I've read so much about it, but seeing it in person is something else." Jiro nudged him playfully. "Guess this means we'll just have to work even harder to make sure we belong here, huh?" "Yeah," he said, smiling. Before Izuku could respond, a loud voice cut through the quiet. "You'd better not embarrass me, Deku." Bakugo barked. His fiery glare fixed on Izuku. Confused, Izuku tilted his head to the side with a perplexed look on his face. "You're the only one yelling. Meaning that you are likely the nervous one." "Excuse me." he yelled out, but the conversation was stopped from a tap on Izuku's shoulder. "Pardon me, sir, but are you here for the tour of this campus?" asked a deep voice from behind him, tapping on his shoulder. Izuku turned around and blinked, looking up at the figure with the bird-like head. "Oh, yes. We're here for the tour," he said, showing the tour pass he had been nervously fiddling with. The figure nodded, their sharp beak dipping slightly. "Very well. I am also on this tour. My name is Fumikage Tokoyami. Pleasure to meet you," he said, shaking his hand. "Nice to meet you too, Tokoyami," said Izuku, smiling at him. He wasn't the only one to show up. There were 3 more people on this tour. A girl that had vines for hair, a somewhat tall girl with black silky hair done up well in a ponytail, and a boy who stood well above the rest with multiple arms and a mask on his face. "Oh yeah? Who is ready to get their tour on?" yelled a man with blonde hair as he struck a pose. Everyone knew who this was as they stared at him. "For those of you that don't know, my name is Present Mick. I am going to be your tour guide, my little listeners," he said, pointing to all of them. Izuku had stars in his eyes as he saw Hiro right in front of him. "Oh my gosh," he said, whispering to Jiro. "I listen to his podcast every morning." "Me too. I forgot that he was a teacher here at UA," she said, panning back over to him. "Alright, my little listeners. I need your names so that I can keep track of you all and not get in trouble again for losing a person," he said, scratching the back of his head. "Inori Yagi. Ichiro Yagi. Itsuki Bakugo. Ibarashai Izaki. Mizo Shoji. Izuku Yagi. Hyoka Jiro. Momo Yaoi Rozu. Fumikage Tokoyami." Present Mick smiled as he finished writing the names down. "Awesome sauce. Now how about we get going, my future heroes," he said, striking another pose. The group, now fully gathered, stood in front of the towering gates of UA, ready to embark on the long-awaited tour. Present Mick waved his hand enthusiastically, leading them forward with unbridled energy. "Follow me, my little listeners. We're going to get an exclusive look at the place where all the heroes are made." His voice echoed off the walls, and Izuku couldn't contain his excitement as he walked beside Jiro, trying to match her stride. As they passed through the gates, the scale of UA Academy hit them like a tidal wave. The sheer size of the grounds was overwhelming. Tall buildings towered over them, each one a symbol of the countless heroes that had trained here. Izuku felt a lump form in his throat as they moved deeper into the campus. This was it, the place he had dreamed about for so long. Now, he was walking on its hallowed grounds. "First stop, the main training area," Present Mick shouted, breaking the silence. "Let me tell you, this is where all the magic happens. The real action. This is the place where you can train your quirks to the most of your potential or even get some actual physical training in. We have full-size cities, mock battle zones, and combat arenas. We also use this space for some of the more intense exams and testing, including the famous entrance exam." Present Mick grinned, clearly proud of the facilities. Present Mick's voice boomed again. "Alright, let's move on to the gym, my little listeners. This is where you're going to get a real taste of the training here at UA. Some of you might find it tough, but it's all part of the process of becoming a true hero." Present Mick continued, "This gym is also where we host a lot of the practical exams and where students can get hands-on experience with their quirks. Let me tell you, the stuff we do here can get pretty intense, and if you're not careful, you might find yourself out of your depth. But don't worry, you'll have plenty of time to train and figure things out." "This place is very dignified," said Momo behind them. "Indeed, it is living up to the expectations I expected from such a prestigious school," said Tokoyami. The group looked around, soaking in the environment. Shoji examined the various devices with keen interest, while Momo appeared to be mentally assessing the space. Her intelligent eyes scanned the equipment, likely thinking about how she would utilize these resources when it was her turn to train. Bakugo, who had been silent for most of the tour, grumbled impatiently. "Yeah, whatever. Let's get to the good stuff." "Oh, we will, Bakugo, was it? You will see much more and what UA has to offer," he said. Present Mick led the group further into the sprawling UA grounds, his enthusiasm never faltering. "Alright, my little listeners, next up on our tour is the Support Development Studio. This is where all the tech-savvy minds come together to create the gear that helps heroes do what they do best." The group entered a large building buzzing with energy. Inside, they were met with a flurry of activity. Students designing suits, testing gadgets, and collaborating with instructors. The air smelled faintly of metal and oil, the sounds of welding and machinery humming in the background. "This place is incredible," Ichiro exclaimed, his voice filled with awe. "They're building hero gear right in front of us." Momo's eyes gleamed with interest. "The level of innovation here is astounding. I've read about this place, but seeing it in action is something else." Jiro nudged Izuku lightly. "Bet you'd love to try some of this tech out, huh?" Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. "It's amazing. I'd probably spend hours here if I could. Let's keep moving." President Mick announced, clapping his hands. The next stop is the dormitories. Something that is new to the UA school. They were implemented this year, he said, making his way across the campus. There was a quiet silence for a little while as the group slowly made their way to the newly built dorms. Welcome to the dorms, said President Mick, showcasing the buildings before him. As you can see, we have Class 1A and Class 1B sharing the building together. This goes for the second years and third years. Let us not forget we have dorms for the support course and general core students, he said, opening the door for them to enter the Class 1A building. The group stepped into the Class 1A dorm building, greeted by a spacious and modern common area. The room was tastefully decorated with a mix of sleek furniture and colorful accents that gave it a warm yet contemporary feel. Large windows allowed natural light to stream in, and a soft hum of activity could be heard from the adjacent kitchen and lounge areas. This is the shared living space where you'll spend a lot of your downtime, President Mick explained, his arms spread wide. It's designed to help you bond as a class while giving you all the comforts you need to focus on your training. Each floor has its own unique layout, and your private rooms are fully customizable. The students began exploring the common area, their excitement palpable. Momo walked over to examine the bookshelves lining one of the walls, while Shoji observed the kitchen setup with interest. Tokoyami found a corner near the windows, quietly admiring the view of the campus grounds. Ah, and here is one of our amazing first-year students, said President Mick, placing an arm around a student who was on the couch. Izuku looked to see the boy had small black eyes with blonde spiky hair and a smile on his face. Hello everyone. My name is Mirio Tagada, he said. Mirio Tagada's bright, warm smile immediately put everyone at ease. I am a first year here, and I can say that everything here is amazing, and if you all attend here in the future you will all get the best education, he said, winking and giving a thumbs up. The group chuckled at Mirio's infectious enthusiasm. His bright personality seemed to radiate positivity, easing any lingering nerves among the potential students. Thanks, Mirio, President Mick said, gesturing to the rest of the group. Why don't you tell them a little more about what it's like to train here at UA? Mirio nodded eagerly. Of course. UA really pushes you to grow not just as a hero, but as a person too. The teachers are amazing, the facilities are top-notch, and the challenges. Well, let's just say you'll discover what you're truly capable of. Jiro tilted her head. What kind of challenges do you mean? Great question. Mirio responded. For example, there are mock battles where you have to strategize against classmates, rescue simulations that test your quick thinking, and physical challenges that push your limits. Oh, and the teachers sometimes jump in to make things extra tricky. Bakugo smirked, his competitive side already stirred. Sounds like my kind of place. I'll show everyone how it's done. Mirio chuckled, unfazed by Bakugo's boldness. That's the spirit. But remember, teamwork and adaptability are just as important as raw power. As the group continued to ask Mirio questions, Izuku couldn't help but feel inspired. He admired Mirio's confidence and easy demeanor. If I make it to UA, I want to carry myself like that, Izuku thought. Alright, let's not overwhelm the guy. President Mick interjected with a laugh. We've still got more to see, my little listeners. Next up, let's head to the cafeteria. The group followed President Mick out of the dorms and toward a sleek modern building with wide glass doors. Inside, the cafeteria was bustling with activity. Students were scattered across tables, some chatting animatedly, while others focused on their meals or books. The aroma of freshly cooked food filled the air, making more than a few stomachs rumble. This is the cafeteria. President Mick announced. They've got everything you could want: nutritious meals, quick snacks, and even options tailored to students with specific dietary needs. Trust me, the food here is so good, you'll forget it's part of school life. Momo raised her hand slightly. Do they cater meals for students with unique quirks that affect their dietary requirements? Absolutely. President Mick assured her. We've got chefs and nutritionists who work together to make sure every student gets exactly what they need to perform their best. The group spent a few minutes exploring the cafeteria, with Ichiro marveling at the variety of food options on display. This place is like a 5-star restaurant, he whispered to Jiro, who nodded in agreement. Actually, what is convenient about this is that it is lunchtime right now. So how about we all get some grub, and I will meet back with you here in a bit. I need to go talk to one of the teachers here, he said, winking at them and walking away. As President Mick strolled off, the group found themselves standing in the middle of the bustling cafeteria. They exchanged glances, some feeling a bit hesitant about diving into the lunch crowd, while others were eager to sample the food. Izuku and Jiro sat together while they noticed that his siblings and Bakugo were at a table far away from them. He was fine with that, so he didn't need to deal with them. Izuku and Jiro exchanged a small smile as they sat down at a corner table, trays of food in front of them. The aroma of freshly made curry wafted from Jiro's plate, while Izuku's tray was laden with a balanced assortment of rice, grilled fish, and steamed vegetables. The quiet hum of the cafeteria seemed to provide a momentary reprieve from the energy of the day so far. "Excuse me if I can sit here?" asked Momo with a tray in her hands. Izuku looked to see Shoji, Tokoyami, and Abara were there too. "Of course," he said, smiling, gesturing to the seats. The group settled into their seats, and the atmosphere at the table quickly became lively. Momo placed her tray neatly in front of her and adjusted her posture, always composed and elegant. Shoji, with his calm and collected demeanor, sat down with minimal fuss, while Tokoyami chose a seat that allowed him to keep an eye on the room. Abara, serene, as always, folded her hands briefly in silent prayer before picking up her utensils. "This place really does feel like a step above a regular school," Momo said, glancing around the cafeteria. "Even the food options seem designed to cater to every taste and need. It's impressive." Shoji nodded in agreement. "It's clear UA takes its students' well-being seriously. The facilities, the dorms, and now this cafeteria all shows their commitment to developing heroes in every aspect. I find the balance between functionality and aesthetics here to be quite harmonious," Tokoyami added, his tone reflective. "It fosters a sense of unity while maintaining individuality." Abara smiled softly. "It's truly a blessing to be in an environment that supports us so fully. I can see why so many students aspire to join UA." "So, it was Izuku Yagi, was it?" asked Momo, getting his attention. "Yes," said Izuku. "Are you a part of triplets then because you have the same last name as those other two individuals?" he asked. Izuku straightened himself before answering her. "Yes, I am. We don't really get along all that well," he said honestly. "That's why they are standoffish to me." Momo tilted her head, her expression softening with curiosity and a touch of concern. "I see that it must be difficult for you." Tokoyami nodded. His voice solemn. "True strength often arises from solitude. Though the journey may feel lonely, it hones one's spirit." Shoji gave Izuku an encouraging look. "But it doesn't mean you have to walk that path entirely alone. There's strength in finding others who support you." "Oh, I know. That's why I am friends with Jiro right here," he said, pointing over to her. He put an arm around her and smiled. "She is pretty punk rock, as she likes to say." Jiro shrunk a little bit and blushed slightly. Jiro quickly swatted Izuku's hand off her shoulder, though her cheeks remained tinted with a faint blush. "Don't get carried away, Yagi," she mumbled, her tone a mix of embarrassment and amusement. "So, what are everybody's quirks?" he asked, trying to get to know everyone. Momo was the first to respond, her tone polite and eager to share. "My quirk is creation. It allows me to create any non-living material or object as long as I know its molecular structure. It's incredibly versatile, though it requires a lot of studying to master." She smiled modestly. "I've spent years learning chemistry and engineering to make the most of it." "That's incredible," Izuku said, his eyes lighting up with genuine admiration. "The amount of knowledge and strategy you must need. It's like you're carrying a portable laboratory with you." Momo blushed slightly at the compliment but maintained her composure. "Thank you, Yagi. It's a privilege to use it to help others." Jiro looked at the blushing girl with a weird feeling in her chest. She didn't know what it was, but she didn't like Izuku complimenting other girls. Tokoyami nodded, his expression serious. "I am Fumikage Tokoyami, and my quirk is Dark Shadow. It allows me to manifest a sentient shadowy creature that I can control." Abara spoke next, her voice soft yet confident. "My quirk is vines. My hair functions as extendable and flexible vines that I can control with precision. They're excellent for capturing, restraining, or even shielding others. However, they require care and hydration to remain effective." "Like a living shield and tool," Izuku murmured, visibly impressed. "That's so unique. It must feel like an extension of yourself." Abara smiled, a serene warmth in her eyes. "Indeed, it is. I view it as a gift to serve others." Shoji chimed in, his deep voice calm and steady. "I go by Shoji Mizo. My quirk is dupli arms. I can replicate different parts of my body, like hands or eyes, on the tips of my tentacle-like arms. It's great for multitasking, reconnaissance, and close combat." "That's so practical," Izuku said, leaning forward slightly. "You must have incredible adaptability in both offense and support roles." Shoji nodded. "It's useful, though it also means training a variety of skills to maximize its potential." Finally, Jiro cleared her throat. "Well, my quirk is earphone jack. I can plug my jacks into objects to channel sound waves, either to amplify my heartbeat for sonic attacks or to pick up faint vibrations and sounds." "That's very unique," said Momo. Jiro shrugged, a slightly sheepish smile tugging at her lips. "I guess it's a bit unconventional, but it works for me. Plus, it's handy when I'm not playing music," she added with a wink. "What about you, Yagi?" asked Abara. Jiro looked over to him, realizing that this could be a problem. She knew that he had 5 quirks now, 6 if you include synthesist, and he couldn't just openly say it. Izuku hesitated for a moment, his mouth opening slightly, as he tried to figure out how to explain his quirks without revealing too much. He couldn't exactly tell them about all 5 of his quirks, 6 if you counted synthesist. The truth was complicated, and he didn't want to draw too much attention to himself. But before he could formulate an answer, the loud boom of Present Mick's voice cut through the air. "Alright, kids, are we ready to continue the tour?" Present Mick's trademark enthusiasm bounced through the cafeteria as he approached the table with a wide grin on his face. Izuku quickly straightened up, glad for the interruption. Yeah, ready when you are," he said, flashing a quick smile to his classmates, who seemed just as eager to move on from their lunch break. Present Mick gave a quick thumbs up. "Great. Follow me, everybody. We've got more to see, and it's time to hit the ground running." As Present Mick led the group toward the hallway, the students shuffled along, chatting amongst themselves and stretching a bit after their meal. Some seemed relieved to be away from the lunch table, eager to get moving again, while others looked like they were ready for a break after all the new information they'd absorbed. "Bathrooms, bathrooms." Present Mick called back to the group. His energy unwavering. "You've got about 2 minutes before we move out. Make sure you're all set, cause we've got a packed schedule ahead." Jiro walked into the bathroom to wash her hands real quick after her meal. She heard someone else enter and turned her head to the door to see it was Izuku's sister who was walking in. She assumed she had to use the bathroom too, but she was there for a different reason. "Jiro," she said distastefully. "Yes, Inori," she replied. "How much did he pay you to hang out with him?" she said, leaning against the wall. She tilted her head, confused. "Excuse me? My brother is too boring to have friends. Not to mention he doesn't even have a quirk. So how much did he pay you to be his friend?" she said, putting up air quotes. Jiro's confusion deepened as she processed Inori's words. She had expected this from what Izuku told her, but this felt different and it caught her off guard. She blinked, taking a step back from the sink. "I'm sorry, I don't really understand what you're saying." Inori's eyes narrowed as she crossed her arms, leaning against the bathroom wall in a relaxed yet pointed stance. "You heard me. Izuku's got no charm, no skills. He doesn't have a quirk at all. Why are you hanging out with him?" She scoffed, clearly dismissing her brother's abilities with a flick on her wrist. "He's the kid who should have been left in the shadows, but you are hanging out with him for a reason that I can't think of. He is about the pinnacle of uselessness." Jiro's hands balled into fists as her anger began to boil over. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. How dare Inori talk about Izuku like that? He was a hardworking, kind-hearted person, and to have his own sister belittle him in such a way was beyond infuriating. She closed the gap between them, her voice low but edged with fury. "You really think that's how things are? That Izuku is some kind of burden to be thrown away just because of who he is?" Jiro's tone was sharp and the energy around her crackled with frustration. "You don't know the first thing about him. Do you think because he doesn't fit into your little box of what's useful or cool that he's worthless? All I see is that he has an asshole sister and brother who doesn't give a shit about him. That's where I went in, showing him he's worth something and that he can be something. It's disgusting to see siblings treat him like this," she said angrily. Inori's eyes widened slightly at Jiro's words, but the shock quickly faded into a cold, disdainful smirk. She uncrossed her arms and stepped closer, looking down at Jiro, as if she were the one in control. "You think you know him, huh? You think you understand what he's been through? You don't get it. He's always been the disappointment in our family, the one who never lived up to expectations. It's not my fault he can't keep up. If you're determined to waste your time on him, then be my guest. But don't act like you're doing him any favors. You're just indulging his pathetic fantasies," Inori said, turning away from her. "And you're just being a huge bitch in his life that thinks too highly of herself. I can't imagine how your parents treat him," she replied bitterly. Inori paused for a moment, her back still turned to Jiro, but Jiro could feel the sharpness of her words hanging in the air. It was clear that Inori was on the defensive now, and Jiro's last remark had struck a nerve. Inori's entire demeanor had shifted, her posture stiffening as she clenched her jaw tightly. "Watch your mouth, you fucking lesbian-looking bitch," Inori spat, her voice icy. "You don't know a thing about our family. Don't think you can come here and act like you know what's best for Izuku. You don't know what it's like to have him dragging down everything he touches." Jiro, unfazed by the comment, got in her face to say one last thing. "Then you know nothing of him. 10 years from now Izuku is going to be the #1 hero, smiling at the world and being a hero to everyone and their hearts. Your family will be the ones at the bottom," she said, pushing her slightly as she left the bathroom in a huff. Alright. Is everyone ready to go? We've got places to be and things to do. Time to get moving, folks," said Present Mick. "Let's finish this up." The next couple of hours went by in a flash as the group wondered about the rest of the UA campus. Soon they were at the gate ready to leave. I would like to thank you all for coming to tour our marvelous campus and get a glimpse of what we have to offer here at UA, President Mick said with his usual enthusiasm as he waved them toward the exit. Remember, this place is full of opportunity and you're all capable of great things. Take in everything you've seen today, it's just the start. The future UA students began to walk away, but Izuku was stopped by Momo, who turned to him quickly. Wait, I would like to exchange my numbers with you so that we can stay in touch. You do plan on attending UA, right? Izuku blinked in surprise as Momo approached him, a gentle but determined smile on her face. His heart skipped a beat at her words. He had only just met her, but it seemed like she was already making an effort to keep in touch. It was something he hadn't expected but felt a little grateful for. Yeah, I do plan on attending UA, Izuku said, his voice a bit uncertain but hopeful. I'd be happy to exchange numbers. Momo's smile grew wider and she pulled out her phone, unlocking it with a quick swipe. Great. I think it'll be good for us to stay connected. We're all going to face challenges ahead and it might help to have someone to bounce ideas off of or just talk to every now and then. Izuku nodded enthusiastically, already feeling the weight of the upcoming challenge, but also sensing that he was starting to build a network of people who would be there to support him. He reached into his pocket for his phone, quickly pulling it out and unlocking it. Here you go, Izuku said, holding out his phone to Momo. Shoji looked at this and smiled from one of his arms. That is a great idea. Let's stay in touch with each other, he said, giving his number out. He saw Bakugo, Inori, and Ichiro had walked from the group to make their way home, ignoring them as they exchanged numbers. He soon had Ibara's, Shoji's, Momo's and Tokoyami's numbers and felt a sense of camaraderie forming among them. It felt like he was finally starting to build a support system, one that might carry him through the challenges of UA. It was nice meeting you all, said Izuku to them as him and Jiro started to walk away. Let's hope that we see each other again, said Ibara, bowing to him. Izuku smiled softly, his heart warm with a mixture of nervousness and excitement. Yeah, I hope so too, he replied, bowing slightly in return before turning to walk alongside Jiro. Jiro looked down at the ground as they made their way to the train station. Izuku caught notice of this and frowned a little. You okay, Jiro? Jiro hesitated for a moment. Her hands stuffed deep into her jacket pockets. She kicked a stray pebble on the sidewalk, watching it bounce away before she spoke. Yeah, just thinking about some stuff. Izuku tilted his head, concern evident in his expression. Was it something Inori said? How did you know, she said, looking at him slightly surprised. Because she went into the bathroom the same time you did and you came out of the bathroom looking like you were going to go Super Saiyan, he said, moving closer to her. Jiro chuckled softly at Izuku's attempt to lighten the mood, but the tension in her shoulders didn't entirely ease. Yeah, she had some choice words, she admitted. She said some really awful things about you. About how useless you are and how you don't deserve friends. Honestly, it pissed me off more than I thought it would. Izuku sighed. What did she say about you? Cause I know she said something to you specifically. Izuku followed Jiro onto the train, his concern growing. He took a seat across from her, waiting for her to answer. Jiro leaned back against the window. Her arms crossed tightly, as if trying to shield herself from the memory of the conversation. She called me a lesbian-looking bitch, Jiro finally muttered, her tone half disbelieving, half angry. I don't even know why she felt the need to say it. It's like she was just reaching for something to hurt me. It's not the first time someone thought I was a lesbian. I don't get why people associate short-haired women with lesbian. Izuku's eyes widened and his expression immediately darkened. That's awful. I'm so sorry, Jiro. She had no right to say something like that. Yeah, well, I'm used to dealing with people who think they can get under my skin by throwing around insults, Jiro said, shrugging, but her voice betrayed a hint of hurt. What really got to me wasn't what she said about me, it was the way she talked about you. Like you were some kind of inconvenience to her, someone who didn't deserve to have people care about him. It made me want to punch a wall. Izuku looked down at his hands, his fingers curling into fists. She's always been like that. Even when we were kids, she never saw me as her equal. It's not just Inori, though. My brother, Ichiro, he's the same way. It's like I don't even exist with them most of the time, and when I do, it's just to remind me that I'm not enough. I know I have told you a lot about them and how they treat me, but that's just what they do. I'm sorry for bringing you into this. Jiro's eyes softened as she looked at Izuku. She uncrossed her arms and leaned forward, resting her elbows on her knees. Hey, don't apologize. You didn't bring me into anything I chose to step in. Besides, you don't deserve to deal with that kind of crap alone. And for the record, they're wrong about you. You're not enough. You're plenty. Izuku blushed heavily at the compliment and didn't know what to do. He did know he had to address what Inori said to Jiro. It was mean, to put it simply, and he felt like he needed to say something to her because it was visibly bothering her. Izuku took a deep breath, his determination rising as he looked at Jiro. He leaned forward slightly, his voice soft but resolute. Jiro, what Inori said to you, it wasn't just mean. It was wrong, plain and simple. You didn't deserve that, and I hate that she made you feel like you did. Jiro shrugged, her fingers idly playing with the zipper of her jacket. It's not like I haven't heard stuff like that before. People like to think they know me based on how I look. Short hair, a bit of an edge to my style suddenly, I'm some stereotype they can throw insults at. It doesn't usually bother me, but today it did. I know I am not a lesbian, but I hate it when people say that stuff. Izuku was turning red from embarrassment. He knew he wasn't good with this type of stuff. He knew he was an awkward kind of guy, but he needed to push this to the side for now. It was for Jiro. Izuku shifted nervously in his seat, clasping his hands together as he struggled to find the right words. I get that. I mean, not exactly, but people have said things about me too, stuff they think they know just by looking at me. Or because of my quirklessness. Or well, used to be quirklessness. He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly, glancing at Jiro to gauge her reaction. Jiro leaned her head back against the window, her lips curving into a faint smirk. You really are a dork, Midoriya. But thanks. I guess you'd understand better than most. Her smirk faded as she turned her gaze to the passing lights outside. Still, it doesn't make it any less annoying. I don't care if people think I'm a lesbian or whatever, I know who I am. But when someone says it like it's an insult. Like it's something I should feel ashamed of. She clenched her fists. That gets under my skin. Jiro then went wide-eyed as she felt something on her right cheek, and it was his hand. Izuku was struggling to do this as he was looking away from her slightly but continued. He moved his hand to where a couple of fingers were near her earphone jack and a few were on her cheek. Jiro froze, her breath catching in her throat as she felt the warmth of Izuku's hand against her cheek. Her usual sharp, sarcastic demeanor was stripped away, leaving her vulnerable and unsure. Yagi, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Izuku's face was a deep shade of red and his eyes darted away, refusing to meet hers. I just wanted to say something, he mumbled, his voice trembling. You're amazing just the way you are, Jiro. If it means anything, I like your hair, I like your personality, it makes you look gorgeous, Izuku finally managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. Strong. Confidence. Cool. That is what you are. His hand trembled slightly against her cheek. I mean, not that you need my opinion or anything. I just wanted you to know. Jiro blinked, stunned into silence. She had never expected those words to come out of Izuku's mouth, especially not directed at her. For someone so perpetually awkward, he had a knack for throwing her completely off guard. Her face felt hot and she was sure her expression was betraying just how flustered she was. Her face was almost a bright red and her right earphone jack unconsciously moved around his fingers that were still touching her face. Izuku, still visibly panicked from his own boldness, quickly started rambling in an attempt to fill the silence. I just mean, like, you have this way of being why you know, yourself. And it's really uninspiring. He said, pulling his hand away. Not that I'm saying I'm inspired by you or wait, I mean, I am, but not in a weird way. Just. Stop, she said. Izuku froze, completely taken off guard by Jiro's sudden embrace. His heart raced in his chest, and for a moment, he couldn't even remember how to breathe. Her arms wrapped around him tightly, and he could feel the warmth of her body pressing against his. It was an unexpected move, especially from someone like Jiro, who usually kept her distance with her tough demeanor. Jiro, he stammered, his voice almost caught in his throat. Jiro didn't pull away, though. She held him there, and he could feel her take a deep breath, almost as if she was trying to ground herself. It took him a few moments before he realized that, for the first time in a long while, she wasn't being sarcastic or hiding behind her usual sharp remarks. She was simply being herself. He had never seen this side of her before, and he liked it. And it made Izuku's heart throb even faster. You're such an idiot, Yagi, Jiro murmured, her voice muffled against his chest, and he knew she didn't mean it. Izuku looked around to see no one else was in the train car, and he looked down at Jiro, who was still embracing him. He slowly put his arms around her and blushed heavily at the contact. Why's that? He asked slowly. No reason, she said into his chest. The train then came to a stop. Jiro pulled back, releasing her embrace with a small sigh, though her fingers lingered on the edge of his jacket as she looked up at him. Izuku stood frozen for a moment, still feeling the warmth of her touch, his heart hammering in his chest. It felt like the train had stopped for longer than usual, as if time had momentarily slowed down just for them. As the doors to the train slid open, Jiro adjusted her jacket, straightening up and offering him a small playful grin. Well, looks like we're here, she said, her tone returning to its usual teasing self. But there was a softness to it now, a sense of understanding that hadn't been there before. Yeah, let's walk to your home, said Izuku, not meeting her eyes, as they got up. They left the train station, and there was silence between the two of them for almost the whole journey. Thankfully for Izuku, it was a quick walk to get to her house. As they reached the intersection near Jiro's house, Izuku stopped, glancing at her. Well, here we are. Safe and sound. Jiro smiled, her gaze lingering on him for a moment before she gave him a small nod. Yeah. Thanks, Yagi. Izuku took a deep breath before speaking. I meant what I said, Jiro. I hope you know that. Jiro smiled as she looked at him. I know, you big ol' nerd, she said, smirking. Izuku went to say something but was cut off by another hug from Jiro. He was a few inches taller than her and she still hit his upper chest. Izuku blushed for what was the 100th time in the past 30 minutes and hugged her back. You know you don't have to call me a nerd for everything. Jiro chuckled softly. Her arms still wrapped around Izuku's waist as she leaned into the embrace. It's a term of endearment, Yagi, she teased, her voice full of warmth. Besides, you're not exactly helping yourself by being so well, you. I know, but I know you are amazing, Jiro. I won't let you have to deal with my family like that again. You didn't deserve it, he said, still pissed at what Inori called Jiro. I know I didn't, but you all don't deserve anything that they do to you, she said, getting out of the hug now. Yeah. Have a good night, Jiro, he said, starting to walk away from her. Oh, and Yagi, she called out to him. Izuku turned around, still blushing slightly. You said all that stuff about me, so I should do the same, she said, clearing her throat. You're very selfless, caring, and incredible, as a person. Never let that change about you, she said, her face turning red from saying it. Though Izuku didn't see that. He smiled at the compliment. You are too. Have a good night, Jiro, he said, turning around and leaving. Jiro immediately went inside and turned to shut the door, leaning against it slightly. Mika saw her daughter had been talking about Izuku outside and knew something was up. How was the tour review, honey? Mika asked, her voice light but with an underlying curiosity. Jiro let out a soft sigh, still trying to steady her breathing. It was fine, she muttered, her voice quieter than usual. She quickly kicked off her shoes and walked further into the house, trying to act as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. Mika raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying the casual response. She moved toward Jiro, who was now fiddling with the sleeve of her jacket. You're not fooling me, sweetie, Mika said with a small smile. What happened out there? You've been acting a bit different ever since you came back. Jiro flushed a little bit, poking her earphone jacks together. Oh, you know something happened. Izuku defended me, said some stuff to make me feel better. Oh, what a nice boy, I knew he was a good kid, she said, leaving the answer open for her to finish. Jiro cleared her throat, trying to ignore the heat in her cheeks. She rubbed the back of her neck, suddenly feeling more self-conscious than she had earlier. Yeah, some girl called me a lesbian again. He didn't take it lightly and reassured me that there was nothing wrong with me, he said. I was gorgeous, strong, confident, and she said, getting more and more red as she spoke. Mika's eyes widened with surprise, a warm smile spreading across her face as she watched Jiro squirm in embarrassment. Well, sounds like someone made an impression, she teased gently, her tone light but affectionate. I knew that boy had a good heart, but hearing it from you, well, that's something. Jiro groaned, burying her face in her hands for a moment. Stop it, Mom. You're embarrassing me. She muttered, though she couldn't hide the slight flush in her cheeks. I didn't expect him to say those things, and honestly, I wasn't sure what to do. It's just no one's really ever stood up for me like that before. I'm going to my room, she said, all flustered. Her mother let out a gentle smile as she went back to the kitchen. Keep that up, Izuku, honey, and she will be something more, she said, smiling at a picture of her and her husband. 1 year later, the Sludge villain incident. Izuku walked by himself as he was on his way to school. He had gotten cleaned up from his workout and smiled at the day he was having. He was now 14 years old, his green hair flowing gently in the wind. Thanks to his father's genetics, he was a healthy 5'9" with a very lean body from all of the workouts he had been doing the past couple years. He wore clothing that was slightly baggy to make sure people didn't know of his training. Mainly his siblings. His notebook cover company was now making him around $5,000 a month in profit, and if he wanted to, he could just use the money to live off of the rest of his life. Who would have thought that my obsession with heroes would turn into a business? He murmured. He still was doing designs of heroes on the covers, and they were still doing him good. He had been completing tasks and goals that were set for him to get quirk creation points, and, as of now, he had a total of 3 quirk creation points for him to use. He had been saving them, as he didn't know what to do. He had been keeping contact with his friends that he went on the tour with as much as possible, making sure to hang out with them at least once a month, as some live over a few hours away. The streets of Musatafu bustled with the usual morning activity, parents rushing their children to school, shopkeepers opening their stores, and the occasional hero flying overhead on their way to a mission. Izuku's sharp eyes caught sight of a hero in action, a towering man clad in red and gold apprehending a petty thief. A spark of admiration lit up in Izuku's emerald eyes, and his pace quickened. He couldn't wait to reach school, where he'd get to discuss the latest hero news with his classmates or at least the few who tolerated his enthusiasm. He was interrupted from his thoughts when he saw an explosion in the distance. He ran over to see that there was a fight happening. As Izuku Midoriya watches the intense scene unfold at Teruin Station, his mind races with thoughts and emotions, mirroring his awe and admiration from the first time he witnessed heroes in action. He immediately pulled out his hero analysis book, similar to what Jiro got him a while ago. Standing off to the side, Izuku's wide eyes are filled with admiration for the hero's swift and coordinated response. He can hardly contain his excitement as he observes Death Arms using his overwhelming strength to hold the falling portal catenary, his powerful muscles straining under the weight. It's exactly the kind of heroism that Izuku has always dreamed of, a hero putting everything on the line to save others, no matter the cost. Backdraft's ability to create a water fence is something Izuku is particularly fascinated by. His water pump quirk is so precise and well-timed, controlling the situation by keeping the citizens at a safe distance. Izuku knows how important it is for heroes to maintain public safety, and Backdraft's calm and strategic use of his power impresses him greatly. But what captures his attention the most is Kamui Woods. As the hero with the ability to control and manipulate wood, Kamui's arrival feels like a turning point in the fight. Izuku can almost feel the tension rise, knowing that the giant villain is going to have to face Kamui's formidable power. He imagines Kamui's flexible controlled movements, his wood-like appendages sprouting from his body to restrain the villain, all while the massive figure looms before him. It's a battle of agility versus brute force, and Izuku wonders how the fight will unfold. Izuku watches the unfolding fight with an intensity that borders on obsession, his notebook already out, scribbling furiously as he documents every move, every strategy, and every quirk application in the battle. He can barely keep up with the pace of Kamui Woods' movements, marveling at how the hero's arbor quirk allows him to dodge the giant villain's crushing attacks with such finesse. When the giant villain lashes out with his enormous hand, Izuku's breath catches in his throat, fearing for Kamui Woods' safety. But the hero's fluid agility amazes him. Kamui dodges effortlessly, his wooden limbs extending and retracting in perfect harmony with his movements. Izuku mutters to himself as he writes, noting how Kamui Woods uses his quirk not just for offense, but also for mobility and evasion. Dodged again. His reaction time is incredible, and his control over his arbor quirk, it's almost like an extension of his body, Izuku mumbles, oblivious to the curious stares of the bystanders around him. When Kamui Woods attempts to restrain the villain by running up his arm and seizing his wrist, Izuku is on the edge of his seat. That's it. He's trying to immobilize him. If he can just, but his excitement turns to shock as the giant villain effortlessly waves Kamui Woods away, sending him flying through the air. Just as Kamui Woods prepares to unleash his lacquered chain prison, Izuku leans forward, barely able to contain his excitement. But before the attack can land, the ground shakes violently as a massive figure leaps into the fray. Without hesitation, Mount Lady strikes with her canyon cannon, a devastating kick that sends the giant villain sprawling. The force of her attack shakes the area, and the crowd erupts in cheers as the villain collapses, defeated. Izuku's jaw drops in awe. She took him down in one hit. Her strength and timing are unbelievable. As the dust settles and the crowd's cheers grow louder, Izuku can't help but feel a mixture of emotions: admiration for the heroes, awe at their abilities, and a burning determination to one day stand among them. Watching Kamui Woods' strategy, Mount Lady's overwhelming power, and the teamwork of all the heroes involved only reinforces his dream. Izuku blushed a little at how Mount Lady was dressed, but still wrote her down in his hero analysis book number 13. He knew she dressed like that on purpose. He started to mutter as he wrote, "This is her hero debut, and she didn't do that bad of a job. Her quirk is gigantification, allowing her to increase the size of her whole body. I wonder if she can control the exact degree of her size, or if it's always a fixed height. Does it take a lot of stamina to maintain? How much space does she need to maneuver effectively without causing collateral damage?" Izuku's pen flew across the page, filling it with notes and sketches of Mount Lady's stance, her canyon cannon attack, and the way she seemed to time her arrival perfectly to finish the fight. His mind buzzed with analysis, considering how her quirk could be both a strength and a potential weakness. She's definitely strong, but I wonder how she handles tighter spaces or urban environments where her size could be a liability. And her timing, was that purely instinct, or does she have experience calculating the right moment to intervene? Oh, and that kick. The force generated must have been immense. The angle, the precision. If the villain had managed to dodge, would it have been hard for her to recover? The crowd around him began to disperse, satisfied that the danger was over, but Izuku stayed rooted in place, lost in his thoughts. He glanced back at Kamui Woods, who was already helping Death Arms and Backdraft secure the area. Kamui Woods was about to use lacquered chain prison. I wonder if he's frustrated about being upstaged or if he's used to working with heroes like Mount Lady. Teamwork is so critical in these scenarios. Maybe I should add a note about how they combined their efforts. He heard his ringtone from his pocket to see who it was. He pulled it out to see it was Momo Yaoirozu and smiled at that. From that day on the UA tour, he and Jiro became great friends with Momo, Shoji, Ibara, and Tokoyami. While they didn't hang out all the time, they were able to see each other occasionally to talk about what they were doing. Izuku quickly answered the call, his face lighting up with a genuine smile. Hey Yaoirozu. What's up? Momo's calm yet enthusiastic voice came through the line. Good morning Yagi. How are you today? Just dandy, but you are not going to believe this. I got to see Kamui Wood, Death Arms, and then a new hero called Mount Lady making her debut. Izuku's excitement bubbled through the phone as he launched into a detailed recount of the morning's events. Yaoirozu, it was incredible. Kamui Woods was so agile, dodging the villain's attacks like it was nothing. Then Mount Lady came out of nowhere with this massive kick the canyon cannon and took the villain down in one hit. Her timing and power were insane. That's amazing. I bet you were able to jot that down already, she said giggling. Yeah, I was. Say, not to be unappreciative for you calling me, but don't you have school? Because I do, he said as he walked through the gate to go to class. Oh, well our school gets a day off a month and that is that day, she said happily. I was debating on using it to meet you when you were done with school. Izuku blinked, surprised but excited by Momo's suggestion. Really? Do you want to meet up? That sounds great. I mean if it's not too much trouble for you. Not at all, Momo assured him. I thought we could spend some time going over hero strategies. I've been refining a few ideas for combat scenarios and I think your insights would be invaluable. Plus, I've been curious about what you do for your training. I was thinking about the library near your school, Momo suggested. It's quiet and they have private study rooms we could use. Izuku walked down the hallway to his classroom smiling. I would love that. I will meet you there. Bye, my class is starting now, he said. See you later, Yagi, said Momo, hanging up. Izuku put down the phone and sat down in his normal seat. He looked to see Ichiro and Inori glancing at him. The two of them were physically much stronger than they were when his father started to train him. Not quirk-wise but body-wise. Inori was much more toned while Ichiro bulked up and slimmed down slightly, giving off a much more athletic build than the bulky physique he used to have. They both had been putting in extra hours in the gym, following Izuku's father's advice to work on their physical condition and resilience. Nothing really changed between him and his family, and to be honest he was fine with that. He had grown accustomed to the feeling of doing something for himself and hanging out with his friends that truly cared for him. He looked up to see his teacher walk into the room with a stack of papers. As the teacher began handing them out, his gaze lingered on Izuku for a moment. This is your last year, he began, his tone serious. You should start thinking seriously about your future. But you guys are all planning to become heroes, right? He paused, waiting for a response. Yeah. A chorus of voices responded enthusiastically from the class as kids started to use their quirks. The teacher nodded approvingly. Yes, yes. You all have wonderful quirks. He said, but his tone shifted. But using your powers at school is against the rules. Izuku's mind snapped back to attention. The excitement that had started to build inside him now shifted to focus. He understood where this was going. Using your abilities outside of controlled environments could easily lead to accidents, misunderstandings, or worse, putting others in danger. His thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Sensei. Katsuki Bakugo's voice cut through the air with his trademark intensity. Don't lump me with these guys, Bakugo snapped, his face contorted with disdain. There's no way we're gonna be stuck at the bottom with the rest of these losers. Agreed, myself, Inori, and Kaken are going to go far. These guys would like to get hired by some D-lister in the future, Ichiro said, pointing his thumb back at the crowd of students. Izuku shook his head at his brother's remark. Now he will admit Impact Drive is a very powerful quirk. Inori's quirk Mind's Reach is also very powerful, even Bakugo's quirk is as well, but they didn't need to act like snobs about it. Any quirk trained well enough could have its uses for hero work. He was snapped from his thoughts as the teacher turned their attention to the trio. Oh yeah, if I remember correctly, Inori, Ichiro, and Bakugo, the teacher said, eyeing the group. You three wanted to attend UA? Is that correct? Ichiro nodded with a serious expression, his sharp eyes showing nothing but determination. Absolutely, he said, his voice steady. UA is where the strongest go. It's where I belong. Bakugo's smirk was immediate, his usual arrogance on full display. Of course, we're aiming for the US. We aced the mock test. We're the only ones at this school who could possibly get into the US. His voice boomed with unshakable confidence, as if the fact were a known truth. We'll definitely surpass All Might and become the top hero. Our names will be inscribed on the list of top earners. Yeah, sure, Kaken, Ichiro added with a grin, his voice filled with the same level of arrogance. You might just beat everyone to the top. Inori and I will be right behind you, though. We're not the type to settle for second place. Expect us to be right there every step of the way. Oh yeah, that is right, Izuku, you were planning on attending UA, right? Asked a teacher, making everyone divert their attention to the young man sitting in his seat. Yes sir, was all he said, causing an uproar between the students. Most were laughter, but his siblings and Bakugo just looked at him with a mixture of anger and confusion. The youngest of the Yagi triplets, attending UA, that's the best joke I've heard all day, said one of the students, laughing his ass off. Izuku gritted his teeth but kept silent. His classmates' laughter echoed in his ears, but he refused to let it shake him. He had spent too much time doubting himself already. Now, more than ever, he needed to stay focused on his goal. His siblings, Inori and Ichiro, didn't help matters. Inori raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Ichiro, however, shook his head, his lips curling into a sneer. Pathetic, he muttered under his breath, but just loud enough for Izuku to hear. You'll never make it. Just face it, you're not cut out for it. Izuku sighed once more. This was going to be a long day, he said to himself, sitting up in his seat. Elsewhere. Hey, stop that villain. Many people could see a Sludge villain running down the street with the wallet of the person it took from. Tashanori was holding some groceries, seeing this happen, and sighed. I can't even buy groceries without something happening, he said, transforming into his buff form. He then started to chase after the said villain. But Izuku had finished writing in his analysis book and checked his phone to see a notification of a Sludge-like villain. Maybe I could swing by on my way to Aoirozu to see it, he said, getting up from his desk. His danger sense went off and yanked his notebook away just in time to see Bakugo and practically lunged for it. Bakugo was slightly surprised at the speed but continued anyway. I am afraid I am not done with you, Deku. Done with what? He asked, half annoyed and half curious. What book is that? He asked, trying to see it. My hero analysis book number 13, he said, still not letting him get it. He then saw a green aura form around the book, realizing this was Inori's doing. He quickly put the book into his bag, preventing her from using her quirk on it. Ichiro snorted, you know Deku, heroes start making waves when they are young, and don't even get me started on you not having a quirk. So, what, UA got rid of that rule long ago, he said, shrugging his shoulders. The point that he is making is to not apply to UA, you fucker, said Bakugo threateningly. I don't care what you think about my quirk, Kakin, Izuku replied, his voice steady. Quirks don't define who you are or where you go in life. Bakugo's expression twisted into an even deeper scowl. Then why the hell are you even trying to go to the USA? You're just gonna hold everyone back with your uselessness. He shouted, his voice filled with contempt. His hand sparked small explosions, showing just how ready he was to act on his anger. Inori shook her head at Izuku and sighed. Alright, guys, let's go. He isn't worth it, she said, trying to get them out. Bakugo smirked as he waited right at the door, staring at Izuku. Hey, I do have a great idea for you to get a quirk, he said, smirking. You could take a swan dive off the roof and hope for a quirk in the next life, he said, chuckling slightly. This even had Ichiro and Inori laughing while leaving the room. Now Izuku didn't care about a whole lot of what they had to say, but the fact that 3 of them had laughed at telling him to commit suicide was just wrong. This made him feel much different than before. He shook his head as he put his backpack straps on, leaving the classroom. He knew his siblings didn't care about him, but that hurt more than he thought it would. He started to make his way over to the library, realizing how far he had come. He went from a scrawny, quirkless, awkward, and above-average smart kid. Now he was a lean, athletic, super smart, and still awkward kid who was on his way to being a hero with several quirks. But he was on the same path as the Sludge villain. Something went off in his head. Not danger sense, but an empty feeling in his stomach. That was when his danger sense went off. He activated his eagle eyes to see there was sludge starting to go around his foot. He actively sends 2 tendrils off to the end of the tunnel. He propelled himself away from the villain. The Sludge villain grinned at Izuku. Well, you seem like a power quirk user. You will make a great vessel for me, he said, charging down the tunnel at Izuku. Izuku was prepared to fight as the manhole cover in between then burst open. The man standing well above him, with blonde hair in the shape of a rabbit, stood menacingly. You've got to be kidding me right now, thought Izuku as he saw All Might, his father, right there. Fear not, citizens, I am here, he said, cocking his fist back at the scared villain. Take this, you Avildor. Texas smash. The ground trembled as All Might launched his fist forward with earth-shattering force. The Sludge villain, caught off guard by the sheer power of the attack, was sent flying backward into the side of the tunnel, its body splattering across the walls before collapsing into a heap. The impact left a crater in the pavement and the air was filled with the sound of debris settling. Izuku stood frozen for a moment, his eyes wide in disbelief. For, as much as he neglected him, he sure as hell was strong. He wasn't the #1 hero for nothing. In the blink of an eye, Izuku saw All Might capture the villain in a soda bottle. All Might twisted the cap onto the soda bottle, trapping the sludge villain within. He inspected the bottle with a satisfied grin. "There we go. Another job well done," he said, holding it up like a trophy. He looked back to see that his youngest son of all people was there. Izuku? What the hell was he doing here? "Thank God I got here. He wouldn't have been able to defend himself," he said, turning to walk to the boy. "Young man, are you hurt in any way, and are you okay?" he asked with that grin still on his face. "Yes sir, I am fine," said Izuku, as calm as he could be. He wouldn't lie, his adrenaline was pumping right now, and seeing his father didn't help either. "That is a good young man, would you like my autograph?" he asked, leaning down over him. Even if he didn't like his father all that much, having an autograph from All Might would be great to pass on to his children. He knew that, and that he would love and take care of them much more than he ever did. Izuku hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, sir," handing him his hero analysis book. As his dad took his book, he thought about All Might as a whole. Now even though he didn't respect his father, he still respected All Might to model after him to some extent. Saving people with a smile on his face is something that he thought was a great thing All Might did. It reassured people that they would be okay. That was about the only takeaway though. The older he got, the more he tried to separate the hero he was and the man he was behind the scenes. All Might flipped through Izuku's hero analysis for the future notebook, a faint glimmer of surprise crossing his face. The pages were filled with meticulous notes, sketches, and detailed diagrams analyzing quirks and battle tactics. "This is an impressive young man," All Might said, his voice tinged with genuine admiration. "You've put a lot of thought into this." Izuku shifted uncomfortably. "Thank you," he said quietly, watching as All Might scrolled his autograph across the top of a blank page. "Say if you don't mind me asking, what would you like to do with your life, young man?" Izuku sighed internally as he knew what his father was doing. He was trying to be curious, but to him, this would look like a casual conversation between hero and citizen. He couldn't give it away, not for what he had planned anyway. He wanted it to hit his family all at once, what they missed out on. "I am not sure, to be honest. I plan on going to the USA. Then after that, I do not know," he said, trying to not placate it. "A fine goal. But that is okay, you don't have it figured out yet." "I didn't for a long time when I was a boy," he said, giving him a thumbs up. Izuku nodded, not wanting to continue this any further. "Alright sir, I will let you take the villain to the proper people and I'll be on my way," he said, turning away from him. "The deal," he said, crouching down to launch himself off. As Tashanori soared through the air, he could feel that the conversation was off. Was Izuku always that quiet? Normally he was a pretty loud kid when it came to stuff, he liked it, but that was every kid. He would have to see him later tonight. He landed on a rooftop to give himself a cooldown from his transformation, not realizing he was missing something in his pocket. But Izuku. He shook his head lightly at this predicament. He just hoped that he wouldn't really bring it up after today. He looked up to see Yaoi Rozu leaning up against a brick wall that led to the library, smiling at Izuku. "Hey Yaoi Rozu," called out Izuku. Izuku approached Yaoi Rozu, her calm smile, a welcome sight after the whirlwind encounter with his father. She waved at him, pushing off the wall with effortless grace. "You're late," she teased lightly, her tone warm. "I was beginning to think you ditched me for something more exciting." Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. "Not exactly. Ran into some trouble on the way here, nothing I couldn't handle, though." Yaoi Rozu raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "Trouble? What kind of trouble?" Izuku hesitated for a moment before deciding it wasn't worth hiding. "Sludge villain. But don't worry, I am okay." Her expression shifted to one of concern. "Are you okay? Did you get hurt?" "I'm fine," Izuku reassured her, waving off her worry. "Well, how about we go and get some food? I am sure you are hungry and you can tell me what happened." "The library can wait," she said, trying to pull him along. Izuku smiled at Yaoi Rozu's offer. The idea of eating something good after a stressful encounter sounded perfect. "Yeah, that sounds great," he said, his voice sounding more relaxed than it had all day. "Good. I know a place not far from here," Yaoi Rozu said, already turning toward the exit. "It's a small cafe, but their food is really good. You like it?" Izuku nodded eagerly, following her as they made their way through the streets. As they walked, the cool evening air started to settle in. It was refreshing after the tension of the day, and for a brief moment, Izuku let his mind wander to more peaceful things, like the meal ahead. "So, how's your training going?" Yaoi Rozu asked as they walked side by side. "It's going well," Izuku replied, though he felt a little unsure. He'd been working hard to improve his skills and learn more about his quirks, but lately, there was this gnawing feeling that something wasn't quite right. His encounter with All Might earlier that day only added to that unease. Yaoi Rozu noticed his hesitance. "Is everything alright?" You seem a little distracted. Izuku nodded, smiling at her. Yeah, I am good. Aoirozu gave him a sideways glance, sensing there was more to the story. If you ever want to talk about it, you know I'm here, right? Her voice was warm, and there was no judgment in her words. Izuku felt a surge of gratitude toward her. I appreciate it, Izuku said quietly. I really do. I just don't know if I'm ready to talk about it yet. They walked in silence for a few more moments before Yaoirozu spoke again, her tone lighter now. Well, I'm sure some good food will help you feel better. You'll see. Izuku smiled. Yeah, you're probably right. The two of them continued to walk as they made their way to the cafe. Momo looked at one of her green-haired friends with a smile on her face. What was weird was that she did feel something weird on her left leg. She looked down to see there was sludge already up to her knee, and it was rising faster. Aoirozu's eyes widened in alarm as she realized the sludge creeping up her leg. Its sickly, viscous texture clung tightly, and it was spreading upward quickly. She immediately grabbed Izuku's arm, pulling him back as she tried to free herself. Yagi, it's the sludge villain. She exclaimed, her calm demeanor giving way to urgency. Izuku's heart raced as he turned to see the familiar greenish mass of the sludge villain writhing and bubbling from right behind her. This causes people in the streets to panic at the sight of the villain. Izuku's eyes widened as the crowd around them erupted in chaos. People screamed and scattered, some ducking into alleyways while others sprinted in the opposite direction. The sludge villain's gurgling voice boomed, his slimy form writhing with malicious intent. You're not escaping me this time. The villain growled, his semi-liquid tendrils lashing out toward Momo. Momo struggled against the sludge gripping her leg, her normally calm, composed expression replaced with one of alarm. Izuku wasted no time, his instincts kicking into high gear. He grabbed her arm and pulled, trying to free her from the villain's grasp, but the sludge only tightened its hold. Momo, use your quirk. You have to create something to fight back or stun him. Izuku shouted over the noise of the panicked crowd. Momo clenched her jaw and nodded, forcing herself to focus. She placed her free hand on her exposed forearm, and within seconds, the outline of a large shield formed around her arm, preventing the villain from getting a good grip on her. I won't let you get away. You will be a great vessel. The villain snarled. Time for you to go, kid, he said looking at Izuku. The villain sent a punch right into Izuku's chest, losing his grip on Momo as he was sent flying into a car. Izuku crashed into the car with a loud thud, the force knocking the wind out of him. Pain radiated through his body as he struggled to regain his bearings. His vision blurred for a moment, but he shook his head, forcing himself to focus. Her shield had managed to block some of the sludge's advance, but the villain's relentless nature made it clear they weren't out of danger yet. The sludge villain turned his attention back to Momo, his slimy mass urging forward. You think you can escape me? Think again. He growled, his tendrils lashing out to grab her once more. It was pandemonium. Izuku's mind swirled right now, and everything slowed down. He looked to his left to see Death Arms, Kamui Woods, and Backdraft trying to contain the crowd. He was amazed at how fast they got here. To his right, he sees Mount Lady blocking the way at the other end of the street. He didn't blame them 100% because their quirks weren't suited for a villain like this. Then he saw Momo still struggling against the villain. Most of her skin was getting covered, which wouldn't be good for her quirk. Izuku gritted his teeth, his body protesting every movement as he forced himself to stand. The sharp pain radiating through his chest was nothing compared to the urgency surging in his veins. Momo needed him, and there was no time to hesitate. He put a smile on his face as he prepared himself for battle. Let go of her. Izuku roared, summoning his resolve, as 3 tendrils of black whip shot out from his arms, streaking toward the sludge villain like dark lightning. The glowing black tendrils wrapped around Momo's body gently but firmly. He stomped his feet into the already damaged car as leverage and continued to pull her. Momo was wrapped in something similar to a harness from Black Whip as she was slowly being pulled out. She created a flashbang, throwing it in the villain's face. Holy shit, this kid is strong, said the sludge villain trying to hold onto her. Izuku gritted his teeth even more as he continued to pull on Momo. He didn't even know where this strength was coming from. Momo created multiple flashbangs from her skin and used it on the villain. Then it worked. Momo was out of the villain's grasp and launched towards Izuku. Izuku caught her in his arms, falling from the force he pulled her at. Izuku had cushioned her to make sure he took the brunt of the blast. Izuku struggled to catch his breath, holding Momo tightly as they landed in a heap on the pavement. His body ached from the impact, but the immediate relief of pulling her away from the villain was worth it. Still, the sludge villain was enraged, and Izuku could feel the heat of his fury as the villain prepared to launch himself at them again. You fucking brat. You are dead. The villain screamed, his limbs coiling, ready to strike. But before the sludge villain could advance, a sudden flash of light streaked across the street and a burst of cold and hot air swirled around them. The villain froze mid-motion, his entire form shaking, as he looked at the man before him. Floating in front of Momo and Izuku was Frostflare, one of the few sidekicks to Endeavor. He was in a hero suit of deep blue with black accents all over. He was ranked 39th on the charts, and he was the son of Endeavor. Frostflare's icy blue eyes glinted as he hovered just above the ground, his body surrounded by a shimmering aura of frozen air. His white hair, edged with a faint blue glow, shifted slightly in the wind, and his intense gaze locked onto the Sludge villain with an air of authority. The streets, which had been full of chaos just moments before, fell silent for a brief second, the tension palpable, as the villain recoiled, sensing the sudden shift in the atmosphere. "You're not going anywhere," Frostflare said, his voice calm but icy, dripping with the confidence of someone who knew exactly how to handle a situation like this. He waved his hand, sending a powerful ice blast toward the villain, effectively freezing him. The ice blast shot forward with incredible speed, striking the Sludge villain's writhing mass with a violent crash. The villain let out a strangled gurgling scream as the cold surged through his body, freezing him solidly in an instant. His tendrils, which had been lashing violently toward Momo and Izuku, were now stiffened and rigid, completely immobilized by the intense frost that had overtaken him. Frostflare turned down his flames and floated down to the ground with graceful ease, his boots barely making a sound as they landed on the pavement. He glanced briefly at Momo and Izuku, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he nodded toward the villain, who was now nothing more than a frozen, grotesque statue of sludge. "That should hold him for now," Frostflare said, his voice calm and authoritative, but with an undertone of satisfaction. His piercing icy gaze turned toward the chaos around them. The remaining panic in the street seemed to subside now that the immediate threat had been neutralized. Heroes from nearby had already begun to secure the area, ushering civilians to safety and keeping the perimeter clear. Izuku, still holding Momo in his arms, breathed a sigh of relief as the adrenaline in his body began to fade. His body was sore, aching from the impact of the villain's blow and the strain of pulling Momo from the Sludge's grasp, but the rush of victory and the relief of her safety kept him going. He carefully helped her to her feet, making sure she was steady before he took a step back. "Are you two all right?" he asked, walking over to them. Izuku nodded, wincing slightly as his sore body protested the movement. "Yeah, we're fine," he said, his voice rough but steady. "Thank you." Momo, who had been quiet for a moment, smiled up at Frostflare. "We really owe you one," she said, her voice warm despite the chaotic circumstances. "That ice blast, you were amazing." Frostflare gave a small, almost imperceptible nod in acknowledgement. "It's my job," he said simply, as though it were no big deal. But Izuku could tell by the way his gaze lingered on them that there was a deeper layer of thought behind his words, a quiet intensity that suggested a willingness to help but also a certain distance. Frostflare's gaze lingered on Izuku and Momo, his icy blue eyes scanning them with a mix of curiosity and quiet approval. Despite his calm exterior, there was something in his demeanor that hinted at a deeper sense of urgency, a weight that he carried silently. "You've got potential," Frostflare said, breaking the silence. "Continue to train hard, and work smart, and I will see you in the top 10 of the hero charts in a few years," he said, smiling at the two. "Let's get you some medical attention," he said, putting arms around the two kids and walking them back. The three of them were then almost blown down by a big gust of wind. They looked to see it was All Might standing there. "I heard the commotion. What happened?" he asked, looking behind them to see the Sludge villain that fell out of his pocket earlier was frozen in the middle of the street. "All Might," Frostflare greeted calmly, stepping forward. "I've neutralized the villain. He won't be causing any more trouble." He gestured to the frozen Sludge villain, his expression stoic. All Might's eyes darted between Frostflare, the frozen villain, and the two teenagers. His trademark smile faltered for the briefest moment. "Thank you, Frostflare. You've done well." His gaze settled on Izuku, who instinctively straightened despite the soreness coursing through his body. "Young man. You seem to find danger wherever you go," All Might said, his booming voice directed at Izuku. "Are you alright? What happened here?" Izuku hesitated, his mind racing. He didn't want to draw attention to himself, especially after using Black Whip so openly. "I am fine, sir," he stammered, bowing slightly. "The villain attacked us out of nowhere. Frostflare saved the day." Frostflare tilted his head slightly, observing the interaction between All Might and Izuku with a subtle curiosity. The boy's nervousness wasn't unusual. All Might had that effect on people, after all, but there was something about Izuku's demeanor that caught his attention. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it was clear the young man carried more weight on his shoulders than most his age. All Might, meanwhile, beamed down at Izuku, his trademark grin back in full force. "Good to hear. You've got a knack for survival, young man," he said, giving Izuku a hearty pat on the shoulder. Izuku winced slightly but managed to put on a sheepish smile. All Might then turned his attention to Momo, his expression softening. "And you, young lady, are you hurt?" I'm fine, thank you, Momo replied, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. All Might nodded approvingly before looking back at the frozen villain. Excellent work, he said, addressing Frostflare. Your control over your quirk is impeccable. The precision of that ice blast is remarkable. Frostflare crossed his arms, his expression unchanging. It's all about control and timing, he said simply. No point in power without precision. His tone was neutral, but there was an unmistakable edge to his words, a quiet pride in his mastery of his abilities. Frostflare looked at the two teens and smiled as there was an ambulance off to the side. Why don't you two go and get some medical attention to make sure you're fine, he said, then turning to All Might. Will you help me with the villain, All Might? All Might nodded firmly. Of course. Let's ensure this villain doesn't cause any more trouble. You unthaw the villain and I will seal him so that the police can apprehend him when they arrive. Frostflare's icy blue eyes lingered briefly on the two teens before he turned his full attention to the frozen villain. As he approached, his aura of frost began to intensify again, the air around him shimmering with a mixture of cold mist and heat distortion. All Might followed close behind, his towering presence overshadowing Frostflare's more subtle but equally commanding demeanor. Meanwhile, Izuku and Momo made their way to the waiting ambulance. Izuku winced with each step, his body protesting from the strain he'd put on it. Momo, though shaken, walked steadily beside him, her gaze flicking back toward Frostflare. Do you think he's always that composed? She asked, her voice quiet, as though not wanting to disturb the atmosphere. Izuku glanced back at Frostflare, who was now speaking with All Might as they examined the villain. I don't know, he admitted. But he definitely knows what he's doing. It's like he's been through this 100 times before. Makes me wonder if Endeavor is the same way, you know, like father like son. Momo nodded thoughtfully. It's reassuring, isn't it? Knowing that there are heroes like him out there. Izuku smiled faintly. Yeah. It is. As the two teens reached the paramedics, one of them, a young woman with a warm smile and steady hands, helped Izuku onto a stretcher. You've had a rough day, she said kindly. Let's make sure everything's alright. Momo hesitated, glancing at Izuku. I think I'm fine, she said, though her voice wavered slightly. The paramedic gave her a reassuring nod. Even if you feel okay, it's good to get checked out. Adrenaline can mask injuries. Izuku watched as Momo was being treated first per his agreement when he felt someone stand behind him. He turned around to see Death Arms was there. He stood up straighter for when he would address him. His expression was stern but not unfriendly, a seasoned hero sizing up someone who had clearly been through the ringer. You alright, kid? That is a lot even for heroes, he asked calmly. Why yes sir, he replied. I would like to say sorry sir. I understand that quirk use is bad, but I just wanted to make sure that she was going to be okay. I understand if I am going to get in trouble, he said, bowing down before him. Death Arms tilted his head, his stern expression softening slightly at Izuku's humility. He placed a firm but not unkind hand on Izuku's shoulder, his grip steady and reassuring. Relax, kid, he said. First off, you were attacked, which right out of the gate allows you to use your quirk to defend yourself. Secondly, I wanted to say I was impressed with your skills, strength and wits to save your friend or girlfriend or whatever she is to you, he said, leaning against the ambulance. Izuku's face turned bright red at Death Arms' comment, his hands waving in front of him frantically. She's not my girlfriend. We're friends. He stammered, his voice a mix of embarrassment and panic. Momo, overhearing the exchange, as she was being checked over by the paramedics, glanced over with a slight blush, but composed herself quickly. Thank you for the assistance, she said politely, addressing Death Arms. Death Arms chuckled, his stern exterior softening further. Relax, kid. I'm just messing with you, he said, his deep voice carrying a hint of amusement. But jokes aside, you did well. Not a lot of people your age would have the guts to jump into a situation like that, let alone handle it as well as you did. Izuku blinked, the praise catching him off guard. Thank you, sir, he said, bowing slightly. I just couldn't stand by and did nothing. That's good. What I am saying is that I hope to see you down the line. With what you just did, you will be a great hero, he said honestly. I completely agree, said Kamui Woods, walking up to them. Good work out there, kid. Maybe we can work in the future together. You are pretty strong if you are able to pull her out, he said, looking to see All Might was stuffing the villain back in a jar. No need to be so formal, kid. Just keep working hard and I'm sure you'll make it far. Momo, now finished with her checkup, stepped beside Izuku. Her expression was composed, but there was a glimmer of pride in her eyes as she looked at him. Yagi is remarkable, she said. He was fearless in protecting me, and I wouldn't have been able to hold my own without his quick thinking. Izuku blushed furiously at her words. It was nothing, really. You were amazing too, Yaoi Rozu. Momo's cheeks turned a faint pink, but she maintained her poise. Thank you. But we both know teamwork made the difference. Kamui Woods nodded approvingly. Teamwork is essential. It's what separates the solo vigilantes from true heroes. Unlike my associate over there, he said, pointing to Mount Lady flaunting herself around the press and media. The others chuckled as the two aspiring heroes were being checked out by workers. A couple of hours later, Izuku was walking Momo to the train station to send her on her way home. Izuku coughed, trying to find a topic to think of. Well, that was something, wasn't it? Momo nodded, her hands clasped neatly in front of her as they walked. Despite her composed demeanor, the faintest smile tugged at the corners of her lips. It was, she agreed. Not exactly how I envisioned today going, but I suppose that's the nature of being a hero, isn't it? Unpredictable. Izuku chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. Yeah, definitely unpredictable. I mean, villains attacking out of nowhere. That's kind of standard, but still. Momo glanced at him, her expression softening. You handled yourself well, Yagi. I don't think I've ever seen anyone move so decisively in a situation like that. Izuku's face turned pink and he looked down at his shoes. Thank you. But honestly, I just acted. You were the one who stayed calm and thought of using flashbangs at some point. We make a good team, Momo said simply, her tone warm but matter of fact. Yeah, we do, Izuku said, his voice quiet but sincere. He looked at her, and for a moment their eyes met. He quickly turned away, feeling his face heat up again. So, are you okay? I mean, really okay? Momo hesitated, then gave a small nod. I am. A bit shaken, perhaps, but otherwise fine. What about you? You pushed yourself pretty hard back there. I'm okay, Izuku said quickly, though his body ached in protest with every step. I'll probably feel it tomorrow, but it's nothing I can't handle. Momo's brow furrowed slightly. You should rest. Overexertion can lead to injuries if you're not careful. I will, Izuku promised. I just wanted to make sure you got to the train station safely, and sorry for not using my healing quirk back there. I didn't want them to see me using more than one, he said, as he saw the train station in the distance. That is quite alright, and thank you for being a gentleman, Yagi, she said, nudging him with her hip. Izuku stumbled slightly at the gentle nudge, his face turning bright red. He let out a nervous chuckle and adjusted his pace to match hers again. Yeah. Of course. I mean, it's the least I could do after everything. Momo smiled, clearly amused by his flustered reaction, but she didn't press further. The train station loomed closer, its lights casting a warm glow on the cobblestone streets. The hum of the evening crowd filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos they had experienced earlier. As they approached the entrance, Momo hesitated. Thank you for saving me today, Yagi. I was pretty scared, she said in a bold move, hugging him. Izuku turned into a tomato, hesitated, and hugged her back. He noticed she was much easier to hug than Jiro because of the height difference. I didn't know what else to do, Izuku stammered, his voice muffled by her shoulder. I just wanted to make sure you were safe. Momo's gentle laugh filled his ears, and she pulled back just slightly to look at him. Her eyes were soft, but there was a deep sense of gratitude in them. And you did, Yagi. You were amazing out there. She paused, giving him a small smile that made his heart skip. But I think I should thank you for saving me more than once today. Oh, you don't have to do that, he said, waving her off, trying to fan himself from the blush still on his face. Momo's smile only grew at his flustered reaction. I insist, she said firmly but kindly. Without you, things could have gone much worse. You deserve recognition for that. Trust me, I don't need anything or want anything, he said. Momo tilted her head slightly, a thoughtful look crossing her face. Even if you don't think you need or want recognition, it's still important to acknowledge the good you've done, Yagi. You have a habit of underselling yourself. Izuku scratched his head awkwardly, unsure how to respond. I just think it's what any hero would have done. You would have done the same for me, Yaoi Rozu. No question. She smiled at him warmly, the kind of smile that made his heart flutter and his thoughts scatter. Perhaps. But not everyone acts with the same conviction and selflessness you do. That's a rare quality, Yagi. You should hold on to it. The train soon pulled up to the station and he waved her off, watching her head to her home. Izuku sighed as he put his hands into his pockets. He really wasn't looking forward to seeing his family because there was no doubt his dad told them what happened. Thank God he didn't see him use a quirk. That was when a pit of dread hit him. The news stations and media. They likely recorded him using Black Whip to save Momo. He prayed they didn't see much. 30 minutes later. He stood outside of his door taking in a breath. Multiple things could happen if he opened that door. The first thing could be they hadn't watched the news yet or his father didn't tell them. The second thing was he did tell them and they wanted to know what happened. Or the third thing he thought of as they found out he had a quirk and would have to explain. Let's hope it wasn't the latter option. He opened the door to see his mom and father on the couch as they approached him. He was surprised his dad was able to get here before him, but then remembered he had to make sure Momo was safe when he dropped her off. "Izuku, we saw what happened on the news. It's on the television right now," said his mother, pulling him to the living room. There he saw Inori and Ichiro with a straight look on their faces as their eyes were fixed on the TV, but he knew they were pissed. The five of them watched as it cut to the 7 o'clock news. This was likely the third time they had seen this, but they were still watching it on TV. The room was tense as the footage played on the television, a shaky video from someone's phone showing the chaotic scene of the earlier incident. The camera zoomed in just as Izuku was about to extend out Black Whip, but Momo's multiple flashbangs had blocked it out of view right as he was able to pull her out, making him internally sigh with relief. The news anchor cleared his throat before speaking. A little while ago, a sludge-like villain was attacking middle school students when they were walking down the street. The two students reacted quickly to the situation. Thankfully, the hero Frostflare was able to come in to stop the sludge villain from causing further damage. But not before a student by the name of Izuku Yagi pulled out his friend. The news anchor continued, Izuku Yagi pulled out Momo Yaoirozu from the villain, creating an opening for the hero Frostflare to finish the job. While the hero Frostflare intervened to neutralize the threat, witnesses report that the students played a pivotal role in ensuring no one was seriously harmed. Authorities commend their actions as they were the ones attacked first and defended themselves but remind civilians to leave such dangerous situations to licensed heroes. Tashanori turned to his son and looked at him with a calculating stare. "First off, are you okay?" Izuku couldn't help but think this was the first time in ages that he was given this much attention. "Yeah, I am," he said, looking at everyone staring at him. "Good," he said, getting a smack on the back of his head from his father. "What the hell is this?" he said, gesturing to the TV. Izuku didn't flinch from the hit but rather looked confused at the TV. "That was me saving my friend from an attack," he said, pointing to Momo. Ichiro whistled when he pointed at her. "Give her my number while you are at it." "She looks hot," he said, nodding his head slightly, but was hit by his father in the chest. "Not the time," he said, turning back to Izuku. "That was the dumbest thing you could have done. Running to the fray like that." Izuku was getting a tick mark on his head. He was glad they didn't see him use his quirk, but this was ridiculous. He saved Momo's life, where was his credit? Was that something not to be proud of? Tashanori's words stung, and Izuku felt his frustration bubbling beneath the surface. He clenched his fists, trying to keep his voice steady. "I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. Momo was in danger. I had to act." "You had to act?" Tashanori repeated, his tone sharp. "You are quirkless. Charging in is going to get you killed. So, this is what this was about." They thought he was still quirkless, thus making them think he was weak and an idiot for charging in. This was something he didn't think of in the many possibilities of being talked to. Inori walked up to him, shaking her head in exasperation. "Izuku, as your sister, this was an idiot move. You needed to let the pros handle it. If you saw this as you shot to get yourself seen as a hero, then that was even more stupid." His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to keep calm. "I wasn't trying to get attention. I was trying to save someone. Momo was in danger and I couldn't just sit by. I had to do something." "You're not a hero, Izuku. And you never will be," Ichiro shot back, his voice harsh with frustration. "You don't have the training, you don't have the experience, and worst of all, you don't have a quirk." He was being tag-teamed and he was about to reach his boiling point. He was genuinely trying not to lose it right now. "I wasn't trying to be a hero," he said, his voice strained but firm. His mother's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Izuku, look at the footage. You're rushing in without any thought for the consequences. Everyone is right, Izuku, you need to accept that and move on." Izuku stood frozen, feeling like the air had been knocked out of him. He was clenching his fist so hard that his veins and muscles were starting to show. "You know what, you guys are right," Izuku said, his voice laced with bitter laughter. His hands trembled at his sides as his knuckles turned white. "You're absolutely right. The next time that someone is in danger I won't care about it. I will just sit and watch as they are begging for help and not do anything. You guys couldn't be any more right," he said, still bitterly laughing. "Oh, come on, Izuku," Ichiro scoffed, crossing his arms. "Don't be dramatic." "Dramatic?" Izuku turned on him, his emerald eyes blazing with frustration. "The thing that is so fucking stupid is that we wouldn't be having this conversation right now if it was Inori or Ichiro who had saved someone. We would be celebrating and partying and they would be praised like no tomorrow, but because it is me, we must make sure Izuku knows it's wrong." Tashanori was getting a bit annoyed with this right now. He hadn't expected Izuku to take it this far and he normally never did. "Alright, that is enough, Izuku," he said, trying to end it. Act scoffed as he looked at his dad, "and the fact that you didn't deny just proves my point." "I said that is enough, Izuku," Tashanori glaring at him. "No, it isn't. Dad, like I said. This wouldn't be a conversation if this was Ichiro or Inori. So, let me ask you this. You and Mom are walking down the street when, suddenly, Mom is taken down the alleyway. Are you going to sit there with your thumb up your ass and be like, welp, looks like I have to wait for the pros to show up while my wife is being taken to God knows where. Tashanori's eyes widened slightly at Izuku's blunt and brutal example. That's not the same thing, he said, his tone hardening. Don't twist this into something it's not. Oh, it's not the same? Izuku challenged, his voice rising. What's different about it? Because it's you in the situation. Because it's someone you care about. If anything, that just proves my point even more. He took a step closer, his frustration spilling over. You'd act. You wouldn't hesitate. You'd do what you could to save Mom, no matter how dangerous it was. Because you care. Just like Inori would do, just like Ichiro would do, and just like I will continue to do. It is common sense to help people when they are in trouble. I am not going to sit there and watch Yaoi Rozu, one of the few people who I have as friends, fight for her life, he ran, breathing heavily. Tashanori pinched the bridge of his nose, his patience wearing thin, but before he could say anything, Inori jumped back in. That's enough, Izuku, you need to learn to. Izuku clicked his teeth together in annoyance. Shut up, Inori. The only reason you and Ichiro are pissed is because it wasn't you on that TV. You weren't the one getting the attention. The room was silent for a moment, the tension so thick it was suffocating. Izuku's chest heaved as he tried to steady his breathing, his anger still simmering just beneath the surface. His sibling's stunned expressions only fueled the fire burning within him. Yeah, that's what I thought, Izuku muttered, his voice bitter and cutting. You can't deny it, can you? The only reason this is such a big deal is because it was me, he said, wiping away the sweat that was on his forehead. But you know what? Like I said before, you all are right and will continue to be right. Anything that you say goes, and anything I say is wrong and will always be wrong. That's just the reality that I live in. You are right, Dad. You are right, Mom. You are right, Ichiro. You are right, Inori. And I am wrong per usual, he said, turning away from them to go to his room. The door slammed behind Izuku as he retreated to his room, leaving the rest of the family in stunned silence. His words echoed in their ears, slicing through the tension like a sharp blade. Izuku sat on his bed, breathing heavily, trying to calm the storm raging inside him. The room was quiet, but the weight of his thoughts felt suffocating. His hands trembled as he clutched his face, wiping away the sweat that dripped down his brow. His mind raced, replaying the confrontation with his family repeatedly. He continued to wipe away the sweat from his face as he tried to calm down, but the sweat seemed to be never ending. He then started to realize he was crying. God damn it, he muttered to himself. Is it that hard to feel appreciated, he said to himself, still crying. He then heard a knock on his door and he shook his head, wiping his tears once more. He opened it with a crack, but not enough for whoever it was to see him or see him crying. What? He asked bluntly. It's Dad. I wanted to talk, he said, fiddling with his fingers. There is nothing to talk about. I told you already. You are right and there is nothing to prove it wrong. Forget this ever happened. Just move on and let's be done with it, he said. Tashanori sighed a heavy, weary sound. Izuku, listen, he began, his voice calm but firm. I said it's fine. Just forget this ever happened. The morning will come and we'll go on with our lives as if nothing happened. Let's be down with this ordeal. I got to get up in the morning for school anyway, he said, shutting his door. The door clicked shut, leaving Tashanori standing outside in the hallway. He sighed again, leaning his forehead against the door for a moment. He knew pushing Izuku further wouldn't help. The boy was hurting, and sometimes, words couldn't mend the chasm of emotions between them. He walked back to the bedroom to see Inko was on the bed already with a concerned look on his face. Inko sat on the edge of the bed, her expression a mix of worry and sadness. She looked up at Tashanori as he entered the room, her eyes searching his face for understanding. How is he? Inko asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He isn't talking to me if that's anything, he said, plopping himself down on the bed. Maybe if we give him some space. That seems like the best course of action, she said, laying down next to him. Yeah, Tashanori agreed with a heavy sigh. Maybe giving him some space is the best thing we can do for now. Like I said, he needs some space. Just wait for a bit and see what happens. Tashanori nodded as he took his clothes off to put some sleeping attire on and called it a day. Few days later, 10 months till entrance exam. Alright, remember to lift with your legs and not your back, Izuku said as he hoisted a fridge up. Izuku had been up almost all night in Mindspace, which was about 40 hours in there, coming up with the soundest ideas to help him in passing the entrance exam for UA. Now he knew from confident speaking he would pass if he were to take it now, but he wanted to be the best of the best. Okoyami, Jiro, Shoji and Ibara checked up and called the two of them after the incident, and they said they couldn't believe that we were famous. Izuku tried to wave it off, but they were persistent in telling them that they were glad to see they were fine. His family though was different. He was barely talking to them as of right now after that whole excursion between them. He would move out, but that wouldn't make any sense. UA had a dorm system making sure that their students were safe, and if they went out and bought an apartment, that would be more of an unnecessary expense, even if he had a lot of money at his disposal. Dee and Chase had come up with the idea to clear out a beach for an assortment of reasons. Reason number one was community service of sorts. The Dagaba Municipal Beach used to be a beautiful beach that Izuku remembered coming to when he was really young, and now it was a place with meters tall full of garbage. Reason number two, he could train here and not have anyone know of what trying he was doing. He could train his new quirks and continue to grow stronger. The focus of the next months would be more on quirk training specifically rather than physical. Yes, he was getting physical training by picking up heavy trash, but he trained in the open area once it was cleared out. Reason number three was the metals and minerals here. Izuku wanted to try to build some tech for himself or others, and this place had lots of it. Copper, steel, iron, and even aluminum could be salvaged from the heaps of discarded appliances and machinery. If push comes to shove, he could just sell the stuff. He placed a fridge down near the entrance and sighed. This would be hard, but he was willing to do it. He thought about the events that happened the past few days, and he shook his head. For lack of a better term, his family really was stupid sometimes. It wouldn't lie if he said he didn't do better letting them hear some of what he had inside of him all these years, but that was just a drop in the bucket. He really wanted to let it fly, but that could wait for another day. He actually chuckled that he had gotten clearance to clean the beach so fast by the city, but then he realized he was in the news recently with the Sludge villain incident, and you could guess why. The best part was that he was given clearance because Kamui Woods, Death Arms, and Mount. The lady endorsed it, which is why it got pushed so quickly. He had asked personally if they could keep this under wraps for obvious reasons. They would send one truck a day, so he would have to make the most of what he did while he had it here. Izuku took a deep breath, rolling his shoulders to ease the tension building there. The fridge wasn't the heaviest thing he'd moved in the past few days, but the accumulated exhaustion from his relentless efforts was starting to creep in. He glanced at the massive piles of trash that still needed sorting and chuckled under his breath. One day at a time, he muttered. He worked till 3 p.m., clearing up a decent section that was about 15 feet by 15 feet. The truck was filled with garbage and pulled out his notebook with the next part of his plan. The 3 quirk creations he had available were already thought out, and he was about to test one of them. Fajin. Fajin fascinated him, which was funny, as most of the quirks of the previous users of One for All were. Fajin allowed him to build up kinetic energy through repetitive motion, storing that energy like a coiled spring waiting to explode. It was versatile and powerful, but the trick was learning to control it. Izuku had been experimenting with different movements to find the most efficient way to charge it without exhausting himself too quickly. The next quirk he needed to make was Jolt. Now yes, on its own Jolt isn't all that powerful, but Izuku wanted to infuse the potential of One for All into Jolt to make it much stronger. The upgraded version of Jolt would allow him to channel bioelectricity at very high levels and then expel it from his body. He would be able to channel it around his body to give him a huge boost in speed, but not in physical attacks. He would be able to channel the electricity into bursts or streams of lightning. Not to mention he would be immune to any electric-based attacks. Lastly, the last quirk creation was going to be used for something he called Zephyr Rush. To put it simply, it was air and wind manipulation. He could use it to propel himself forward, launch himself through the air, and glide through the air. He would be able to use it to control gusts of wind within a certain area, and he would have to train hard to make the intensity of the wind gust stronger, but that would be fine. Lots of work and only so much time, but he knew he got this. Izuku clenched his fists as he put them into a fighting motion. Alright, let me try punches really quick, he said, reading himself to use Fajin. He began with light rhythmic jabs, alternating between his left and right fists. Each punch was fluid and precise, and, as the motion continued, he could feel the energy slowly building in his arms. The sensation was strange at first, a faint buzzing that grew stronger with every repetition. Okay, I think that's enough build-up, Izuku muttered, stopping his movements. He squared his stance, focusing on the target. He'd set up a makeshift punching bag crafted from salvaged materials. With a deep breath, he threw a single punch, releasing the energy in a controlled burst. The impact was explosive. The punching bag flew backward, crashing into a nearby pile of trash. The force of the blow reverberated through his arm, and he winced slightly at the strain. Wow, Izuku said, flexing his hand as he examined the results. That's definitely stronger than my normal punches. But he glanced at his arm, feeling the lingering tension in his muscles. It puts a lot of stress on my joints. I'll need to be careful with how much energy I release at once. I need a lot of training with this quirk so I don't mess up my body. He jotted down in his notebook, nodding at the results. So, Fajin could be used to boost my speed, strength, or both. Though it does take a while to charge, that could be changed if I were to do it rapidly. So, this could give me a boost in jumping, running for extra speed, punching, kicking, and anything else physical, he said, making bullet points. This is going to look like I am going to have a harder time using quirks with Fajin to try to counterbalance it, he said. Yo, Yagi, said Jiro from behind him, tapping him on the shoulder. Dumped Izuku, throwing his notebook and pen into the air and catching them before they hit the ground. Holy crap, you scaredy cat. You were muttering for like 3 minutes. I heard you from the street. Did you forget you invited me here? She said, showing him a few bentos. Izuku blinked, his face flushing crimson as he realized how oblivious he'd been. Oh no. I completely forgot, Jiro. I'm so sorry. He bowed deeply, clutching his notebook and pen against his chest like a lifeline. I was so caught up in testing Fajin and writing everything down that I. Jiro sighed, waving him off with one of her earphone jacks. Chill out, Yagi. I'm not mad or anything. But seriously, you've got to stop mumbling to yourself all the time. People are going to think you've gone off the deep end. She held up the neatly wrapped bentos, her other hand resting on her hip. Please tell me what you ate today, she said, looking at him. Oh yeah, sure I did, he said, looking away from her. Jiro narrowed her eyes, her earphone jack twitching slightly in a way that made Izuku feel like a child caught in a lie. Yagi, she said, her tone flat and unimpressed, your hesitation just gave you away. You haven't eaten anything, have you? No, I have, I ate 2 apples, one for the morning and one for lunch, he said. Jiro groaned, pinching the bridge of her nose. 2 apples? Seriously? That's not a meal, Yagi, that's a snack. You're going to waste away if you keep this up. Sit down. Now. Izuku crossed his arms, looking away from her. Jiro raised an eyebrow, her earphone jacks twitching in annoyance. Don't even try it, Yagi. You're not getting out of this. Sit down before I make you. See now, I know for a fact that you are too nice to me to try that. Even though you poke me with your earphone jack half the time. I swear you did it the other day like 10 times while we were playing darts, he said, looking dejected as he walked over to her to sit down. Jiro smirked as Izuku grudgingly plopped down beside her, crossing his legs and folding his arms like a pouty child. First of all, she began, handing him one of the bentos. If I poked you 10 times, it's because you deserved it. You're terrible at darts, by the way. Izuku let out a small huff as he accepted the bento, mumbling, I wasn't that bad. You missed the board entirely 4 times, Jiro retorted, raising an eyebrow. And don't even get me started on the time you hit the wall. That was 1 time. Izuku protested, though his face flushed with embarrassment. Jiro snickered, leaning back on her hands. Relax, Yagi. I'm just messing with you. But seriously, you need to eat more than just apples if you're going to keep training like this. You're pushing your body weight too hard. Izuku opened the bento, the delicious aroma wafting up and making his stomach growl audibly. His cheeks turned a deeper shade of red as Jiro gave him a knowing look. Fine, he muttered, picking up the chopsticks. But only because it smells amazing. Did you make this yourself? Not this time, Jiro admitted, brushing her bangs aside. My mom whipped it up when I told her I was coming to see you. She said you probably weren't taking care of yourself and made me promise to bring extra. Ah, that stinks. I like the way you make the rice, he said, looking at the food. Jiro blinked in surprise at his comment, her cheeks turning the faintest shade of pink. What are you even talking about, Yagi? She said, brushing off the compliment with a flick of her wrist. It's just rice. Anyone can make it. Izuku shook his head earnestly, pausing mid-bite to look at her. No, really. The way you make it, I don't know. It just tastes better. You add this little, I don't know what to call it, personal touch, I guess. Jiro fidgeted with her earphone jack, pretending to check something on the ground beside her. You're weird, she muttered, though there was a small smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. Now stop stalling and eat. Izuku took a bite of the rice and grilled fish, his eyes widening as the flavors hit his tongue. This is incredible, he said, his voice muffled by the food. Your mom's cooking is amazing. She'll be glad to hear that, Jiro said with a small smile. Now eat the whole thing. Don't even think about leaving a single grain of rice. Izuku grinned, holding up his chopsticks in a mock salute. Yes, ma'am. He dug in with newfound enthusiasm, savoring every bite of the meal. It was a rare treat for him to eat something so delicious, especially with how preoccupied he'd been with training. Jiro leaned back, watching him devour the food with a mix of amusement and satisfaction. You act like you haven't eaten in days, she teased. Seriously, Yagi, what's the deal? Why don't you ever take a break? Izuku paused, chopsticks halfway to his mouth, and glanced at her. I guess I just feel like I don't have time for breaks. There's so much I need to improve on, and everyone else is working so hard. I can't afford to fall behind. Jiro sighed, her expression softening. You know, you're allowed to take care of yourself, right? Nobody's going to think less of you for taking a moment to rest. In fact, you're probably going to get stronger if you give your body time to recover. Yeah, I guess, he said, finishing the bento and taking another one. Your mom makes amazing food, he said. I'll be sure to tell her, said Jiro, twirling her jack. She looked next to Izuku to see his bag with him and walked over to it. She pulled out a book and plopped herself back down next to him with Izuku shaking his head grinning slightly. Oh yeah, just help yourself, he said, gesturing to her. She looked through Hero Analysis Book 13 and smiled. She had meant to ask him this sooner, but she wondered if she was in here. Izuku blushed seeing her flip through the pages. Jiro turned a few more pages, her expression thoughtful. She was scanning through the detailed analysis of various heroes, their strengths, quirks, and strategies laid out in meticulous detail. Her gaze flicked over the familiar names and classifications, but her focus quickly shifted when she spotted something familiar. Hey, Jiro said softly, her voice low, as she pointed to a section on the page. Is that me? Izuku glanced over at the page and immediately felt his face heat up. His fingers fumbled as he quickly tried to close the book, but Jiro stopped him. Wait, Jiro said with a teasing smirk, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. Don't hide it now. Let me see. Izuku swallowed hard, looking down at the book. His mind raced with thoughts. How long had it been there? How much did she know? It's nothing special, he mumbled, trying to play it off. Jiro tilted her head, her smile widening as she leaned in closer to get a better look. Nothing special. Seriously? You wrote an entire section about me. Hero Analysis. Kyoka Jiro. She chuckled softly, flipping through the pages. Let's see what the nothing special part has to say. Izuku kept his hand on the book, looking away from her. Well, you know I do an analysis of heroes and future heroes. I've done them on Yaoi Rozu, Tokoyami, Shoji, and Shiozaki as well. I just don't want you to think it's weird. Jiro raised an eyebrow, her smirk softening into something more contemplative. Weird. She echoed, folding her arms. Why would I think that's weird? It's actually kind of impressive that you take the time to do this. Izuku glanced back down at the book, his fingers still resting lightly on the pages. I guess I just don't want it to come off the wrong way. You know, like I'm obsessing over details or trying to overanalyze everything. Jiro leaned in a bit closer, her expression gentle now. But you're not. It's thoughtful, Yagi. You're just trying to understand how everyone works so you can be better, right? He nodded slowly, still feeling a bit self-conscious. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, then let me see and finish eating your damn food, she said, pointing her earphone jacks at him. I did, he said, pointing to the empty bentos. Good. Then let me read the analysis you did of me. You know you are going to have to change this when we enter UA, right? She said, opening it to her. Yeah, I know. Could you tell me a bit more about your earphone jacks? He asked curiously. I mean, I have basic info on there, but I'd like to know more. Jiro's expression shifted from playful to thoughtful as she paused, her eyes glinting with a mixture of amusement and introspection. She toyed with the end of her earphone jack absent-mindedly before speaking. They're not just tools for me, she began softly. They're a part of how I communicate and perceive the world around me. Each of the jacks has a specific frequency range, and I can adjust them to pick up different sounds, low, high, or even subtle vibrations. It's how I can detect things that most people wouldn't normally notice. She paused, a small smile forming on her lips. It's kind of like being able to hear in more dimensions than just with your ears. Izuku listened intently, his curiosity piqued. That sounds really useful, he said, leaning forward slightly. But it must be difficult sometimes, right? Like if you're overwhelmed by too many sounds or frequencies. Yeah, it can be, but I've been doing it for years, so it is pretty easy to know what is. She said, looking into the book and finding an interesting detail about herself, and blushed as she read it. She closed the book immediately, trying not to meet Izuku in the eyes. Izuku noticed Jiro's sudden shift in expression, her blush betraying her usual calm demeanor. The brief moment of silence felt heavy, the weight of the unspoken thoughts lingering between them. He shifted slightly, unsure whether to break the silence or give her space to gather her thoughts. Hey, Izuku said gently, leaning a little closer. You, okay? Oh yeah, I'm good. But I was going to ask you, are you done training then? She asked, twirling her earphone jack. Not yet, I was going to. He yelped from Jiro, poking him in the arm with her earphone jack. Izuku rubbed his arm where Jiro had poked him, his expression one of mild discomfort mixed with confusion. Hey. What was that for? I asked you, are you done? She said, poking his chest with each word. And I said no, I was going to. He yelped once more from Jiro, poking him with her earphone jack. Izuku winced, rubbing his arm where Jiro had just jabbed him again. Would you stop abusing me, please? This is what I was talking about earlier when you keep poking me. Jiro couldn't help but giggle at Izuku's reaction. Oh, come on. You know I'm just messing with you. She leaned back in her chair, her playful demeanor returning as she rested her feet on the bench. "Okay, I guess I am done training for today then since you said so," he said, sighing, looking sad and dejected. Jiro raised an eyebrow at Izuku's dejected tone, her playful expression softening. She leaned forward again, her feet dangling off the bench as she rested her chin on her hands. "Hey," she said, her voice a bit gentler now. "Don't look down. You've been working hard. You deserve a break." "Well, you made me feel down by poking me, and now I can't train," he said, playing sad as he went on, hoping Jiro knew he was joking. "Oh please, you'll be fine," she said, hitting him in the arm. "Ouch Jiro, you just poked me there, please stop hitting me for a minute," he said, rubbing it out. Jiro gave a light chuckle at Izuku's reaction, her playful demeanor softening. Alright, I'll go easy on you for now," she said, getting up from her spot. "Come on dude, let's go do something," she said. "Like what, darts?" he asked. "Yes, actually. We can go to my place again," she said, pointing in her house's direction. Izuku nodded with a small smile. Dart sounds like a good break from all the training. He gathered his belongings and stood up, adjusting his bag on his shoulder. Jiro led the way back toward her house, her earphone jack swaying slightly as she walked. The setting sun cast a warm glow over the landscape, creating a peaceful ambience. Izuku walked alongside her, the light conversation from earlier still lingering between them. Jiro looked at her friend and blushed once more. She thought back to the words he wrote in the book about. She couldn't shake that feeling that he said about her. She also looks cute when her earphone jacks tangle or when she fiddles with them. Jiro's blush deepened as she thought back to the words Izuku had written about her. The memory of his observation played in her mind, simple, yet unexpectedly personal. She hadn't expected such a thoughtful reflection, and it made her feel something she couldn't quite pinpoint. What a dork, she thought, smiling slightly. My dork. Here is how Inori's and Ichiro's quirk works for anyone wondering. Ichiro Yagi quirk. Impact Drive. It is a quirk that is very similar to One for All, though it is not as powerful. Ichiro has the ability to have several activations that can amplify his body's strength, speed, durability, agility, and endurance many times over, and these activations are known as impact levels. Each level makes him more powerful over time. Hypothetically, if he trained hard enough, he would have the ability to be on the same level as One for All, but, as of now, that is far out of reach. He has 6 levels of impact as of right now, and they are as follows. Impact Level 1. Provides minor enhancements in strength, speed, and durability. Useful for everyday tasks and basic combat. Impact Level 2. Increases his abilities significantly, allowing him to perform more impressive feats, like heavier lifting and faster movements. Impact Level 3. Further enhances his physical attributes, improving his durability and agility, making him more effective in tougher battles. Impact Level 4. Boosts his capabilities to a more substantial degree, offering enhanced endurance and the ability to handle more intense situations. Impact Level 5. Reaches a high level of performance, allowing him to push through tougher challenges, though with noticeable strain on his body. Impact Level 6. Temporarily reaches a peak, though it leaves him vulnerable afterward, requiring rest to recover. Theoretically, as I said earlier, he could have an infinite number of levels of impact if he trained hard enough. Inori Yagi quirk. Mind's Reach. It is a quirk that evolved from One for All, and Inko's quirk Attract created a powerful telekinesis quirk. She has the ability to generate telekinetic fields that allow her to push, pull, suspend objects much more than her weight and at high speeds. Such as fridges and even vehicles. She even has the ability to use telekinesis on herself to allow herself to effectively float or fly. The range of her telekinetic range can increase with trying, but right now it is 75 feet in all directions. Though her range is small, she can focus on several tasks at once, such as stopping falling debris, immobilizing enemies, and rescuing civilians. The downside to her quirk is if she overuses it can cause headaches that progress to migraines and will cause it to feel disoriented and maybe even pass out from the strain and pain. While Inori has excellent control, her quirk requires immense concentration. Distractions or mental disruptions can weaken her hold on objects or cause her to lose control. 5 months until the entrance exam. After 5 months of relentless effort, Izuku stood on the now transformed beach, his hands on his hips as he surveyed his progress. What once resembled a chaotic junkyard was beginning to look like an actual beach again. The sand was clear of debris in large sections, and the sound of waves lapping against the shore felt less muted by the overwhelming clutter. The transformation was a testament to his hard work, and though his muscles constantly ached, he felt a deep sense of pride. As promised, he had been saving some of the scrap he found, bits and pieces of metal, old appliances, and even a few intact objects that still had some utility. A neatly organized pile sat in one corner of the beach, waiting for the day he would find a use for them. Izuku wiped the sweat from his brow, glancing down at his hands. They were calloused and slightly bruised from days of lifting and sorting, but he didn't mind. This work wasn't just about cleaning a beach, it was about becoming stronger and preparing for the future he dreamed of. Ajin was more or less understood to the point he wouldn't hurt himself. He may or may not have broken his fingers testing out his quirk by flicking them rapidly and then releasing them, but that was a test run. He now had a total of 8 quirks, or 9 if you included synthesis right now. Something that he loved about this quirk was the ability to create multiple quirks for his use to help others. But something that he had noticed was this was a huge double-edged sword. Yes, having several quirks in your arsenal was amazing, but the malicious training, hours of work, along with blood, sweat, and tears was something else. He did have one quirk creation point, and he was saving it for something that would go well along with his other quirks. He only had 5 months left, and he would be out of that place. The money he earned from his notebook covers was flowing in now, and he would be fine on his own. There was no point in buying an apartment because he would have to live in the dorms anyway, and he didn't need to waste money like that. But something he did buy was a storage unit. It was a large one too, containing available scrap metal and other materials that he stored up from the beach. Right now, he was using Black Whip to clean up some of the debris from the area. Black Whip had been one of the more challenging quirks to master, its raw, almost chaotic energy requiring constant focus and control. But now, it felt natural, a tool he wielded with confidence. He smiled as he thought of his plan from the start. He created quirks that would not be noticeable. If they were noticeable, they could be explained easily. He would say he had a stockpile quirk that allowed him to use energy in different forms. It would make more sense because he could then say Black Whip, Zephyr Rush, Jolt, and Fajin were different ways he could use energy. His other quirks were Eagle Eyes, Brain Boost, Cell Surge, and Danger Sense, but like he said, they weren't noticeable or too noticeable. He looked over to his phone to see he was getting a call from Yaoi Rozu, and he smiled. "Hello," he said, answering the phone. "Hey Yagi, just reminding you that I got a few of us together to have some dinner," she said. "Oh, who's coming again?" Izuku asked as he changed out of his clothes. "I think it's Jiro, Shiozaki, you and me because Tokoyami and Shoji are busy with some training for the exams," she said. "Sounds good," Izuku replied, adjusting his shirt. "What time should I meet you all?" "Around 7. I thought we'd try that new fusion place downtown," Yaoi Rozu said, her voice brimming with excitement. "I heard they do amazing tempura and their desserts are supposed to be divine." Yagi chuckled. "You had me at tempura. I'll be there. Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself," she replied warmly. "It's been a while since we all hung out together. I think we could all use a break from the grind." "Agreed. I'll see you there, Yaoi Rozu," Yagi said before hanging up. 1 hour later. The restaurant was cozy, with warm lighting and a faint aroma of grilled seafood wafting from the kitchen. Yaoi Rozu had already claimed a corner table, her elegant presence impossible to miss. Jiro and Shiozaki were seated with her, chatting animatedly. "Yagi," Yaoi Rozu called out, waving him over. "Hey, everyone," he greeted as he slid into the seat beside Jiro. "Good to see you all." "Good to see you too, Yagi," Jiro said with a smirk. "I thought you might have ditched us for your training schedule." "You were the one to tell me not to overwork myself," Yagi replied with a grin. "Besides, you guys are more fun than the beach debris." Shiozaki chuckled softly, folding her hands neatly on the table. "We all need a break once in a while." "Exactly," Yaoi Rozu agreed, passing around the menus. "And tonight is about unwinding. No training, no strategizing, just good food and good company." The conversation flowed easily, shifting between updates on training, amusing anecdotes, and shared dreams for the future. Jiro talked about a recent music project, while Shiozaki shared her experience volunteering at a local community garden. Yaoi Rozu mentioned a new book she was reading, and Yagi found himself relaxing in their company, his usual intensity giving way to laughter and camaraderie. As the dishes arrived, crispy tempura, savory udon, and a variety of sushi rolls, their table grew livelier. Yagi couldn't help but marvel at how much he appreciated moments like these. Despite the pressures they all faced, their bonds made everything feel a little more manageable. "I still can't believe you got recommendations," said Izuku, digging into his food. Momo waved it off like it was nothing. "Well, my quirk is pretty strong," she said. "Strong is an understatement," Jiro chimed in. "No," Izuku said, pointing to her with his chopsticks. "I was meaning your brain. You are pretty clever," he said, shoveling in more food. "I agree with Yagi. You are intelligent, so it is no surprise," Ibarra said, nodding in agreement. Momo had blushed at Izuku's words, which didn't go unnoticed by Jiro, who narrowed her eyes at her. Momo cleared her throat, the blush lingering on her cheeks. "We thank you too, but I think that we should dig into the food," she said, trying to ignore the compliment. Jiro unconsciously scooted over to Izuku a little bit more as she continued to eat her food. Izuku wouldn't lie when he said he was starving, as he continued to eat some food. Izuku jumped slightly when he felt Jiro's leg brush against his. So, Yagi, Yaoi Rozu said, steering the conversation to a lighter topic. How is cleaning up the beach going? You know the offer is still on the table if you need any help. It's going well, but it's okay. This is something I need to do on my own, he said looking at her. It's admirable, Yaoi Rozu said, her voice warm with encouragement. But don't hesitate to lean on your friends if it ever gets overwhelming. You don't have to shoulder everything alone. Izuku smiled softly, appreciating her words. Thanks Yaoi Rozu. I'll keep that in mind. Jiro smirked, nudging him with her elbow. You're too humble for your own good, Yagi. Well, someone has to be, Izuku replied with a light chuckle. Otherwise, I'd be insufferable, wouldn't I? Jiro rolled her eyes playfully, but the smile on her face lingered. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand as she glanced at Izuku. Insufferable? You? I think it's more likely you'd trip over yourself trying to apologize for being too insufferable. Fair point, Izuku admitted, his grin widening. Shiozaki tilted her head thoughtfully. Your humility is certainly one of your strengths, Yagi. It's rare to see someone work so hard and remain so grounded. Izuku rubbed the back of his neck, a faint blush creeping onto his cheeks. Thanks, but I think it's just normal, you know. You do what you have to do to improve. There was silence between the four of them as they continued with their meal. Anyone want dessert? Asked Momo. I could go for dessert, Jiro said, setting her chopsticks down and leaning back in her chair. Something sweet to top this off sounds perfect. Same here, Izuku chimed in, finishing the last bite of his tempura. What's on the menu? Shiozaki nodded politely. I wouldn't mind something light, perhaps fruit-based. Yaoi Rozu waved over the server, who approached with a welcoming smile. What do you recommend for dessert? She asked. The server gestured toward a small chalkboard near the entrance listing the restaurant specials. We have matcha parfaits, yuzu sorbet, and a selection of mochi. The chef special is a fusion-style chocolate lava cake with a hint of miso caramel. Ooh, that sounds fancy, Jiro said, raising an eyebrow. I'm intrigued, Izuku admitted. Let's get one of those to share. I'll also take the yuzu sorbet, Shiozaki added. It sounds refreshing. I'll have the parfait, Yaoi Rozu decided. Same, Jiro said. Parfait sounds solid. With their orders placed, the group fell into a comfortable lull, their conversation shifting to lighter topics. Izuku found himself smiling as he watched his friends, their laughter and warmth filling the space around them. When the desserts arrived, the table lit up with excitement. The parfaits were beautifully layered with matcha-flavored cream, sweet red bean paste, and crisp rice crackers for texture. The yuzu sorbet glistened like freshly fallen snow, and the lava cake oozed rich chocolate and caramel when it was cut into it. The four friends enjoyed their desserts quietly savoring each bite. As the restaurant began to quiet down for the evening, Izuku glanced at the time on his phone. Wow, it's already getting late. Yaoi Rozu nodded, checking her watch. I suppose we should start heading out. Izuku grabbed the bill much to the displeasure of the others. You don't have to pay, Yagi, said Ibara, going to grab it. It's fine, I got it, Izuku said, keeping it out of reach of the others who were also trying to grab it. I insist on paying, said Momo, who was still trying to grab it as the group got to the counter to pay. Izuku held firm, clutching the bill like his life depended on it, a determined smile on his face. Really, it's on me this time. You all can get the next one. Momo frowned, crossing her arms. That's not fair, Yagi. I suggested the dinner, so I should pay. Exactly, Ibara added, her tone firm yet gentle. You've already done so much for us, Yagi. Let us do this for you. Jiro chimed in, smirking, as she reached over to tug at the edge of the bill. Come on, Yagi. Don't be a hero about it, at least not here. Guys, I am telling you I got the money, and the meal is covered. You don't have to worry about it, he said, handing the man the money to pay. The cashier took the money from Izuku, giving him a polite bow. Thank you for dining with us. Have a wonderful evening. Momo sighed in defeat, shaking her head with an exasperated smile. You're far too stubborn, Yagi. Seriously, Jiro added, poking him lightly in the arm as they exited the restaurant. It's like trying to argue with a wall, an unreasonably polite green-haired wall. I ain't stubborn. I just want to do the right thing, he said. They all chuckled as Izuku did his normal routine of walking them down to the train station. As the group strolled toward the train station, the evening air was filled with a gentle breeze. The streets were quieter now, the hustle of the day giving way to a peaceful calm. Izuku walked slightly ahead, his hands tucked into his pockets, while the girls chatted behind him, their voices light and teasing. You really didn't have to do that, Yagi, Momo said, her tone part exasperation and part gratitude. I'm perfectly capable of paying for dinner, you know. I know you are, Izuku replied, glancing over his shoulder with a soft smile. But I wanted to. You've all been so supportive, and it's the least I could do to show how much I appreciate you. Jiro snorted, shooting him a playful glare. You sound like you're writing a thank you card. We're your friends, Yagi. You don't need to pay us back for just existing. I know, Izuku said with a chuckle. But it still feels good to do something nice once in a while. Especially for the people you care for. Izuku did realize the weight of his words as he still faced forward, but the girls all had blushes of varying degrees on their faces. The quiet moment between them lingered as they walked, the subtle warmth of the evening enhancing the calm atmosphere. Izuku didn't glance back again, though he could feel the girl's eyes on him. He smiled softly to himself, a quiet sense of contentment settling over him. It wasn't long before the group was at the train station and Izuku looked at the girls. Well, we are here, he said, showing them the place. Jiro stretched her arms as they reached the train platform, a teasing grin still lingering on her face. Well, at least this time you didn't insist on walking us all the way home, Yagi, she said with a wink. It's always a bit of a trek. I don't mind the walk, Izuku said, adjusting his backpack. It's nice to spend a bit more time with you all, he said watching the train pull into the station. That is very considerate of you, Yagi, said Abara walking up to him in a bold move, hugging him and making him blush. Have a good night, she said walking onto the train. Momo and Jiro, not wanting to be outdone, followed suit, each giving Izuku a quick hug before stepping onto the train. Yaoi Rozu lingered for a moment, smiling warmly at him before saying goodbye. Thank you, Yagi, she said softly, her tone filled with genuine affection. Take care on your walk home. Izuku watched as the train doors closed, the quiet hum of the station becoming a little more subdued. He stood there for a moment longer, a gentle smile still on his face, the warmth of their farewells lingering in the cool evening air. Oh God, is it a friend thing or is it a girl thing? I need to understand friendships better so I can be less awkward, he said, fanning himself off and walking home. Izuku got to his home and shut the door to his apartment. It was about 8:30 p.m. and he was going to go clean up before bed when his father stopped him. Hey, Izuku, Tashanori said standing in front of him not sure how to stand. Switching between leaning and crossing his arms. Izuku furrowed his brow at his dad. Yeah, did you need something? He asked. Well, I was just wondering if you needed anything for UA in the next months, it is only a bit away. Like school supplies or anything, or even if you help you with your forms for the general course. He asked. Izuku shook his head in annoyance. No, Dad, I should be fine. I got everything taken care of, he said, trying to walk past him. Tashanori watched his son with a mix of concern and hesitation, his arms still shifting awkwardly at his sides. Are you sure? I just had Inori and Ichiro fill theirs out before they went to their rooms. Yes, I am fine, I filled it out months ago, he said trying to walk up the stairs but was stopped by him pulling his arm. Please wait just a moment, your mother and I need to talk to you for a bit, Tashanori said, noticing how firm his arm was, meaning he was working out. Izuku let out a soft sigh, his frustration evident but not directed at his father. He paused on the staircase, looking back at Tashanori with a raised brow. Okay, fine. What's going on? Tashanori glanced around briefly before stepping aside and inviting Izuku into the living room. Sit down, he said, his voice unusually serious. We just want to talk for a bit. It's important. Izuku hesitated, then made his way into the room and sat on the couch. He crossed his arms, still slightly exasperated but curious about what his parents needed to discuss. Tashanori took a seat next to him, while Inko quietly sat down for a cup of tea on the small table in front of them. Izuku Tashanori began softly, his usual confident demeanor subdued. We've had this discussion with Inori and Ichiro, but we wanted to ask you what you wanted to do after UA. Izuku looked confused but decided to play their game. I will be honest with you. I haven't thought much about it. I mean, I will be barely 15 when I first start school. Tashanori nodded thoughtfully, his gaze steady. That's understandable. So, is that it? Are we done? Asked Izuku, wanting to be done with this conversation. Tashanori let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. Not quite, son. This isn't just a quick chat. It's a chance to figure things out together. You don't have to have all the answers, but we want to make sure you're thinking about what's ahead. Yeah, well, I don't really think now is the best time to talk about this, he said getting up from his seat. Tashanori raised his hand gently, signaling for Izuku to pause. I understand you're tired, Izuku. I promise we won't take too long. Please, just hear us out. I said I am fine, he ignored him and started to walk away. Tashanori's expression shifted to one of surprise. Wait, why? Because, if I am not comfortable enough to have this conversation with you. You should respect that, he said. Tashanori stood frozen for a moment, Izuku's words cutting through the air with an unexpected sharpness. The weight of them settled in his chest as he watched his son ascend the stairs, his back tense, his movements deliberate. Inko had a worried look on her face, he still is pushy with us. Yeah, that's what sucks, said Tashanori sitting down. Tashanori sighed heavily as he sank into the couch, resting his elbows on his knees and cradling his head in his hands. The room felt heavier than it had just moments before, the air thick with unspoken worries. Inko reached over and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, her voice soft but firm. Tashi, he's still a teenager. He's going through so much right now. You can't blame him for wanting to set boundaries. Hell, Inori and Ichiro are doing it. Yeah, I know, but not like what he was doing, he said, putting it where Izuku was a moment ago. I just wait a bit then. He is right when they will be a little over 15 though. Inko nodded as she rubbed her husband's hand as they turned the TV on. Thanks for watching my video and make sure to check out the author of this fanfic, link is in the description, see you next time, till then sayonara.